So 5:30 Central. It's the type of alarm that you set that like you're really screwed if it doesn't go off. You know, the alarm that you got to wake up to drive 2 hours to show up to work at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
but
why'd you come back this morning?
It's an annual thing we do every year at the 4th. We have a friend whose wife's family owns a nice lake house in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, right outside Chattanooga. Didn't want to miss out on it. You know, just do one night. We did all the fireworks last night and everything. I was between leaving early and kind of missing some of the fun last night, or just getting up early and driving in today. I'm glad I did. I'm alive. I feel well. And like you said, there's a ton to get into. Not a ton of heavy lifting to do today in terms of radio.
See, I would take a late night drive over an early morning drive like 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, but you're like the opposite of a morning person.
Well, that's fair. I don't know, like I wasn't even up late last night. Like my latest night up this weekend was playing MLB The Show because I've moved the Rays to Nashville. And
how late?
Like 2:30. Not that bad. I mean, for me, that's not that bad.
No, for I think guys our age, 2:30 is not that bad.
I like ever since I worked in minor league baseball, like that's just what I tell people all the time. My sleep schedule just never really recovered. Like it never really got normal. When you're like working until midnight or 1 so much there, I just kept doing that. Like I don't like that's the excuse I use at least. But that was certainly when that all began. That's for sure.
Can I tell you guys something I discovered?
What's up?
Going to sleep early on the 4th of July is a horrible, horrible plan.
So you live in East Nashville, Andrew.
Yes, I do.
So you were kept up by the fireworks last night.
Well, you know, I had to be here early, and so I was like, yeah, I'll try to. I like to get into a full 8 hours of sleep, and it sounded like World War III outside of my window all night.
Have you always been this way with the 8 hours, or is this a recent development?
No,
in your
I mean,
life?
certainly as I get older, it's definitely better. But I just don't operate if I don't. I don't operate well if I don't get a full night's sleep.
My sweet spot's between 6 and 8. If I'm getting less than 6, I'm useless. But you were kept up. So what time do you think you actually fell asleep with?
Probably like 9:30 or 10. But even still, like starting as soon as the sun went down. You know, not including just the huge fireworks displays, just the ones in the neighborhood, even right outside in my little HOA was still just
love those people.
Yeah, those people don't have dogs. They definitely don't have kids who are just shooting fireworks off.
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised.
I feel like most of the ones in the neighborhood are kids.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I just figured it since I live close to the downtown area. It's like I'm not sleeping until all of this is done anyway, so I might as well just stay up and be productive.
Okay, so and there's a lot to talk about. We're going to talk NIL. That still feels very fresh after coming into effect late last week. We're going to talk Titans, some pass rush angles that we have. Grant Ramey will join us towards the end of the show, talk some Tennessee football. Davey Shepard will come in studio. We'll discuss some major soccer news in Nashville that broke yesterday regarding World Cup qualifiers, some Nashville Soccer Club stuff, but so, Will, you live pretty much in downtown Nashville.
Yes.
What the hell happened last night with the Nashville fireworks? Were you a part of this? Was this the fireworks show that you were enjoying last night? Was the biggest fireworks show in the country?
It looked like downtown? The NFL draft.
It did, yeah. It really did.
The NFL draft, it definitely wasn't as big, but it felt like it, like when the fireworks started. Also, moving around downtown is always bad. Moving around downtown, people are just looking up at the sky.
Yeah, so much worse.
It's like the boss level of moving around in downtown Nashville. It's horrible. Horrible. Because all these people come to the big city. We'd never seen the big city fireworks show before. Well, let's go look at them big ones over the Cumberland River. Give me a break.
Yeah, because in the draft, there's a lot going on, right? The only time everybody's really stopped and fixated is like in the first round when Roger Goodell is out there announcing the picks.
Right.
Otherwise, the band's playing, they're showing packages on the big screens. There's a lot going on. But a fireworks show, everybody's there to see one thing. So everybody's stopped and looking up at the sky. I imagine that makes it hard, the logistics of trying to get around on Broadway. So how much of that did you attempt to do? How much of that did you experience?
I was there for all of it. Like we tried to get into a rooftop bar like around right around the time it was going to start. Obviously, it started 30 minutes late, 20 minutes late or whatever. One of my favorite guys is like fireworks expert guy. Like the guy that like when like the big like finish starts, they're like, "Oh, hey, this is the big finish. This is it right here. This is like the
finale.
This the finale right here. This is gonna be crazy. Oh my gosh!" Like what? It's like we've all collectively never seen fireworks before, and there's one guy that's like, "Oh my gosh, here it is. Here it comes." I love the big finish. Like what are we doing? But then we got to this rooftop, and there, like we found the one bar with no line downtown, which I like to consider myself a local. I'm good at finding the places with no bars. I've got like buddies coming in from town. Like, "Oh, hey, we're going to try this bar down by the river. This is like 9 o'clock. It's like, buddy, if you're not there by like 4, you're not getting a spot, down by the river, whatever. So I was like, "Oh, great. We found this spot, no line. We're going to head to the rooftop. We're going to be able to, I'm not a big fireworks guy, but like, so I've got to make it as enjoyable of an experience for me as possible. So, okay, we're just going to be, not around a ton of people. I generally hate people, so this was a good thing. We get to this rooftop, not a lot of people up there. Oh, perfect. We look up as the fireworks start. The reason there was no line and no one up there is because there's this giant fence just blocking the sky. So I should have thought, like, put 2 and 2 together, like, oh, there's probably a reason why there's no line at this bar. But no, we watched the fence. It was actually kind of cool, though, because you could watch the fireworks off the reflection, like, of one of the high-rise buildings across the block. So I, like, watched the fireworks through a building, like, reflecting it across the river. But it was like a clown festival. The way they started this thing, like, with police officers, like, in that building.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
This was craziness. First of all, before that, was it worth whatever you went through in downtown Nashville to get up to your spot, finally get settled in? Was it all worth it to watch the fireworks show?
I mean, we didn't really work that hard to get there. Because we didn't drive. Like I was not going to get my car out of my parking garage for anything. We had some friends that were at the Sounds game. They're like, "Oh, come to the Sounds game." It was the 5th inning already. I was like, "Well, I don't think I can get my car back to my apartment, so no." It was worth it because we didn't really put in much work. We just walked like 5 minutes.
So if people don't know, the fireworks show was very delayed. I'm sure many people know. I'm sure it annoyed many people last night. The fireworks show was delayed. And I think Brad Paisley performed, and he was supposed to lead us into the fireworks show. It was delayed because there were some individuals, allegedly some half-naked, shirtless dudes running around the bridge building, which was in the blast zone of the fireworks show. So they could not start the show until these people were evacuated. The fire marshal noticed it, and then everything got put on hold. I was following this along on Nashville Scanner, @ScanNashville
Great
on Twitter.
Twitter account, by the way.
Great Twitter account.
Especially last night.
And it's on most weekends in Nashville, you'll find great entertainment. But they were all over this last night. I mean, this came in at 9:17 p.m. Units have a drone and maintaining watch until they have these guys in custody. They will be prosecuted. This could impact or delay the start of the main fireworks show, depending on how quickly they can be removed from the roof/building. People are just running around the bridge building. Somehow they slipped through the cracks, they got through, and they were in the blast zone. They were eventually evacuated or apprehended, but the police officers that went to the scene got stuck in the bridge building for the entirety of the fireworks show.
It's crazy. I mean, how do you know that there are people in there and start? Like the TV aspect of this, I don't think is that important, right? Like I know Channel 2 had this on. Like there's live streams on Facebook. I think the Nashville website or something had it on their website. It was Facebook Live everywhere. Like how do you not just wait until they're out? Like especially given what happened on Christmas. I saw somebody saying like it's incredible that we went from police officers running into a building knowing a bomb is going off running into buildings to get people evacuated and get people out. And then with our fireworks going on above their heads, and we're leaving them in a building in a situation like this. Like, it's a bad call in any circumstance. It's especially a bad call given that. Crazy.
There was a communication breakdown here somewhere. The Nashville Fire Department, this is from Channel 2 WKRN. The Nashville Fire Department said it will work with Metro Police to investigate why the Let Freedom Sing fireworks show downtown began before all police personnel were out of the blast zone. I read one of them was just covered in fallout, basically debris. And when you look at, and like I'm seeing pictures and videos now of the actual fireworks show, like I said, I was out of town, and it was insane. I mean, it looked magnificent. But to be in the blast zone of all that sounds terrifying. Like last night, my buddy's mortar tipped back and pointed at all of us, and we had to scatter as it started shooting fireworks at us. I saw my life flash before my eyes there. I can't imagine.
That would just be the Will show today.
Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine being stuck under the hellfire of whatever this was in downtown Nashville last night.
So what? Yeah, what? Talk me through this. How many fireworks did you have?
So my roommate Blue swung by and bought like $400 worth of fireworks on the way into Chattanooga yesterday, and he's not like a pyromaniac, but it's something about when fireworks are involved that his eyes just light up.
Okay.
And I've never been like that. Like I've never related to that, just being obsessed with watching things blow up. Okay. I've always found fireworks to be incredibly overrated. It's like, and he was asking, do you want to pitch in? Like everybody just pitch in $30-$40. And it's like, that's fine. But I think of it as if somebody approached you and said, hey, there's this awesome fireworks going down in downtown Nashville. It's the largest fireworks show in the country, but you got to pay like $30 for admission.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not. Hell no.
No
I'm not
way.
paying $30-$40 to go watch some fireworks.
Like that's basically what a drink costs down there anyway.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I did.
And that's
anyway.
the biggest show in the country last night. So why am I going to chip in $40 just to watch our measly few mortars go up? But I did. I caved. It's 4th of July. What was buzzkill?
What was crazy to me was the hustle of like every bar still having live music. Like A, during the fireworks show, like, and B, during Brad Paisley. Like Brad Paisley's playing, and I'm walking by like a Luke Combs cover in Honky Tonk Central. Like, what are we? Like
Brad Paisley.
There's a show right here.
Brad Paisley's playing like "I'm Gonna Miss Her" while a band in Tootsie's is covering "I'm Gonna Miss Her" as you walk by.
Literally, like you hear Whiskey Lullaby, and someone's singing like "Let's Go Girls," and it's like, like what are we? There's a weird contrast of like he's playing like a slow like ballad. And then there's just Beer Never Broke My Heart by Luke Combs is going on in 5 different bars at one point. It's weird. Which, by the way, are you like me that you just hate live music?
No.
You don't. You like live music?
Yes, that is.
You're
like
living in the wrong city. Man.
Well,
it's
no.
like my top 5
here's
things
the thing.
to do.
It's like I like live music in the proper context. So if I'm going to like Exit In, if I'm going to one of these smaller venues that are unique to Nashville, where like the people playing the smaller venues in Nashville are good, like better than anywhere else, that's fine. Like if I go to like Tootsie's, which I don't know why I would ever be in Tootsie's, but if I was somewhere like that, I expect to hear live music. I feel like I'm hearing live music at like the library. Like, no, this is a library. Like at 6 o'clock on a Thursday. Like, oh, welcome to the stage. Like, no. I just want, like I was celebrating a buddy's birthday Thursday before the Nashville Soccer Show. Which coming up tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Thursday night at 7. And they start playing live music, and there's like a harmonica going, and like they've got like 5 people up here playing music, and you can't hear yourself talk.
But you're at like a beer garden,
at
right?
7, well, yeah.
You go to a beer garden with benches and tables and a stage.
This was inside. There was an outside portion as well. We were inside at this point. We quickly moved outside. Like it's 7 o'clock on a Thursday. Like, can we set a higher standard for when live music has to be played? Like, no live music until 8. Like, in dinner hours, I don't want to hear live music.
Okay, let's talk about this on the other side. Because you posed the question yesterday. Who's the more annoying guy on social media? Fireworks guy or concert video guy?
They're both horrible, for the record.
When you're tapping through and you're seeing what everybody was doing, that guy that has like 8 straight videos you have to click through of the same mortars popping off at a fireworks show or the guy at a concert. Who is more annoying? I think we all have thoughts on this. We want your thoughts. 615-737-1045. Come hang out with us. Will Bowling, Lucas Panzica with you until 3 o'clock. This is 104.5 The Zone. We'll be right back.
McGregor
What's up, people?
Poirier, 3
Whether
is
you need to
all set.
upsize down.
or just want to take advantage of this red hot market, Mark Spain Real Estate is the most trusted real estate team in the U.S. Don't worry about the hassle of constant cleaning and making costly repairs. You don't have to do that with Mark Spain. Mark Spain Real Estate has been the business and in the business for over 25 years.
We have a lot to talk about still.
And to go from 2020, where you went for months and months and months with literally nothing, just having to create talk fodder out of whatever you could find, this is awesome. But we're going to talk about social media posts. Who is the more annoying guy, fireworks or concert video guy? Whether it's on Snapchat, on Instagram, and you're just flipping through. Now, first of all, you're not going to watch either one. Like, nobody's going to sit there and watch either one. So that's the first thing. If you are, then there's probably something wrong with you. But who's the more annoying guy? I feel like the majority of people are saying concert guy is the more annoying. You posed this yesterday, Will, and we're not going to do the whole poll thing. We'll do that more when Buck gets back tomorrow. But you put a poll question up yesterday. What got you thinking about this yesterday?
Looking at my social media, like looking at my Snapchat stories and Instagram stories and just seeing the same thing over and over and over and over. The people so far, we don't have that many votes, just under 100 votes. But I posted this at the worst possible time where people are actually not on their phones. The people agree with me so far that firework videos are worse than concert videos. This is a firm stance that I will take. Firework social media videos are the worst kind of social media content possible because all fireworks are the same. All of them. At least concerts, you can take one video and be like, oh, this really cool band is playing, and someone else can take a different concert video of a totally different band, of a totally different genre of music. Now, they both suck. Both of these people suck in general. The people that are posting like a minute of concert footage and a minute of fireworks footage. But all fireworks are the same. If you've seen one fireworks show, you've seen all of them. The city of Nashville, not to knock them, put on a great show. It was really cool. With the Nashville Symphony, really, really cool stuff. Being there in person, obviously, there are different varieties of fireworks shows and different ways you can enjoy it, put music with it, yada, 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 or whatever. As far as social media goes, in a 10-minute or 10-second snippet, it's all the same.
Yeah, I'm with you for different reasons. By the way, hang out with us, 104.5 The Zone TV, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Josh Graham says no live music at all. He's with you. Jonah Walden chipped in, said, to answer your question, which is more annoying, concert dude, because fireworks guys usually just once a year. I can deal with that.
That's a fair rebuttal.
It's a fair rebuttal. But I agree with you because now you say you just don't like live music, which is unfathomable.
Well,
to me.
I like concerts. I just don't like sitting in like a restaurant, not a bar. Like if I go to a bar, I expect to hear live music. If I'm at a restaurant at 6 o'clock on a weekday, I don't want to hear live music. I just want to sit there and eat my food.
It makes everything better to me.
Not the conversation because I can't hear the person next to me.
If it's drowning you out, it's annoying. But in large part, like live music is my happy place generally.
And I generally agree. Like I don't know. Like I just
So when I'm flipping through and like fireworks videos, I'm skipping through each one. I have no interest in your fireworks. I just said I think fireworks are overrated as a whole anyway. Definitely not going to watch your Snapchat about them.
No.
But when it comes to concert videos, like if I'm flipping through and I see somebody who was at the Gary Clark Jr. concert the other day, I'll watch like 8 seconds of it and be like, I wonder what song Gary was playing.
The issue with the concert videos is I only want one. I want one story. If you give me like a whole song and like you're the one singing it, that's where it gets tricky because if you're singing in the background,
hearing the voice,
like that is like peak lack of self-awareness.
Absolutely.
The person that is like taking a video and they're just singing in the background.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of being
like,
that guy.
We can hear you. Like it's.
I saw the sound is usually distorted anyway. Like if you're at a loud concert, the audio is terrible.
Honestly, though, in like a distorted way, it kind of makes it better. Like it makes it funny.
Yeah, no,
like I can laugh at you now instead of just being annoyed by you.
You're absolutely right. Hearing the singing voice behind the person taking the video is the worst part of that. And I say that as someone who's been guilty. Like I saw the Black Keys in Bridgestone Arena in like October 2019, and they were awesome. A big Dan Auerbach fan. Everything he touches, I will listen to. But there were a couple of those that I had to play just to show everybody I'm at the Black Keys concert. And I had to, and I had my phone up in front of me, and I sang along to a couple of them, and that's the last time I ever did that because those are gone. They're scrapped. It's awful. So yeah, hate that guy. All these people suck. But I'm with you.
All of these people suck.
I'm flipping through the fireworks stuff quicker than I am the concert stuff. The concert stuff, I have something I can relate to when it comes to that. If it's someone I like,
unless you're in like if you're in like Washington D.C. watching fireworks, like that's cool.
Oh,
If you- if
Will,
you're, like,
this was
over,
the
like, a
largest
monument-
fireworks show in the country.
Oh, I know.
In the country, Will.
I think you also got to separate like backyard fireworks guy filming and the,
Yeah.
the Nashville.
I'm actually almost more sympathetic to the backyard guy.
The guy who just spent $20 on a mortar at a
Yeah.
local tent. That's
It's like, hey, I'm doing this. Watch what I paid for with my money.
okay, rather than the guy just sauntered
Yeah, I think
downtown.
like one of my buddies was holding a firework like on his chest and
Now
it's just
that-
shooting
holding the
out.
base of the
Like
mortar.
that is like, oh, I'm watching you die.
Yeah, that's getting into jackass territory.
Oh,
there.
like it's like I just watched you end your life. Oh,
But
no.
did we all did this at kids, right? Like you try to shoot bottle rockets into
Of
your friend's
course.
eyeballs. Like, is everybody on the same page that we
Wait,
did these things
no.
as children?
Roman candle wars, absolutely.
I value my friends' lives. So
As a
no.
kid, like the
I'm
best
sorry,
part.
I can't relate to this.
The best part about fireworks as a kid is like pretending you're in like a battle, right? Because there's stuff popping off in front of you. You're like ducking for cover, like shooting bottle rockets at people.
100%.
It's fair.
You didn't do these things?
Apparently, I wasn't as violent as you were. I was chilling, just with little
I
those
definitely
little like things you just like throw in the ground and they just like crack. Like I don't know, like that. I don't think I had any like explosives.
I definitely almost started a fire at my lake house in Texas one year, and yeah, bad.
Everybody's
bad
had a
bit.
near disaster with fireworks.
that's
Some
fair.
people have had legitimate disasters. Talk to
Back
Jason
up,
Pierre-Paul.
Terry. Put in reverse, Terry.
But no,
Greatest social media video. Of
I've
all
got
time.
that right here if you want to listen to it.
we're yes.
you really?
I pulled that a while
Oh
back.
my gosh! Absolutely, I want to listen. to
Bag up, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse. Oh, Lord, please. Oh, Lord.
What you doing?
Oh,
The best part.
please.
Here it comes.
What you doing? Terry, what
How
All
old
right.
is this? Because I missed this the first time around.
So
this was a
how old is
Vine.
that bite just on that computer?
No. Just in general, when was that
Oh.
video released?
Oh, like you're just discovering that you're saying.
Well, this year I was not
Oh.
aware of that.
I don't know.
Really?
That thing is that's as long as I can remember.
This is one of my favorite vines ever.
Oh,
So this
it's
wasn't a
Vine
Vine.
Terry.
This
no,
was
this
was
was
not
from
a
way
Vine.
before that.
This is like a minute
More than
long
10
video.
years old?
Oh yeah,
Really?
for
Wow.
Sure.
I'd say it's around that territory. This was in like iPhone camera, like original
Beginnings.
iPhone
Yeah.
cameras. Yeah.
I pulled that audio because I was producing J. Martin Ramon once a few weeks ago, and it was something dumb that Terry Bradshaw had said that they were talking about that Ramon Foster. So I immediately, yeah. So I
That's really funny.
seeing the look on Ramon Foster's face when I surprised him with that audio was worth the little amount of work
Put
it
it
took
in
to grab
reverse.
it.
Yeah,
Terry.
if you haven't seen it, it's a guy who's in a like, it's not a wheelchair. It's a, what do you call those?
It's definitely like an electronic wheelchair.
Yeah, it's like an electronic wheelchair. He lights a firework and then he can't get his chair to go back. No people were harmed in the making of this video either. It's important that we're not
But he
making
was,
fun
he-
of someone just getting destroyed by fireworks.
He
of course.
was very close to getting
Yeah.
destroyed.
So the guy like filming it is just like, back up, what you do? It's like the what you do? It's when he like can't say it. Oh,
So speaking of annoying social media posts, Will, you on Friday, I think you came in and you were like, and this is not to put you in
I
any
was about to say
kind of like,
what did I say?
not in any like, as I do my sports radio shifting gears here
Yeah.
to NIL talk, because this is still very fresh in our minds. This
Yeah.
came through Wednesday or Thursday, and we're still, there's just so many angles you can attack it from. And I think it was Friday you came in, and again, not to say you're advocating against players being able to benefit from their image and likeness, but basically you were talking about already there being the flood on social media. This player's endorsing this player's endorsing this. And you were like, how long until we get sick of seeing this? How long do you think it'll take before the novelty of that will kind of wear off?
Today. I'm today years old. I mean, look, it's like, it's not even, look, I'm a name, image, and likeness guy. I think it makes sense. I think it's good for the athletes. I think it's
love
good
that.
for
I'm
college
an NIL
sports.
guy.
Yeah, I just want to, off the top, big NIL guy. But why are we as reporters like breaking so-and-so signs with PetSmart?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, that
Jamba
was
Juice.
cool. That was cool the day it started. Like, day one, I understand it. But, like, I don't need 5 things to know about this new guy signing with this video game company. Like, I don't care. Like, just give it a retweet. Like, this is more an issue with reporters to me than it is with the actual athletes themselves tweeting out that they're signing with different places. Like, I have you seen all this on Twitter of just, like, reporters are just like, you know, news, so-and-so has signed an NIL deal with insert company here. Like, why do we care anymore? Like,
Well-
I get the novelty, like, on day 1 or 2, but, like, I don't need that.
Yeah, and I think that'll start wearing down a little bit after we get into a week of
I
this
hope
thing.
so.
And it won't be news anymore that, I don't know, this backup linebacker at Alabama, that Henry Toa signed with, like, Jamba Juice or something. Like, we'll stop largely caring about that stuff unless it's a culturally relevant, like Bo Nix and Milo's Sweet Tea. Like,
That
Auburn
was
fans
funny.
loved that. Right.
That was funny.
Stuff like that.
One of my buddies, so I live with an Auburn grad. Most of my friends in Nashville are Auburn grads. And so they were like, what's going to happen? Like, is Alabama, we asked him, like, are Alabama fans just not going to drink Milos now? And my buddy went to Auburn and was like, they can't afford name brand sweet tea. What are we talking about? Like, they're going for the Dr. Thunder version of sweet tea.
Well, as you
they
say
can't
that-
afford Milo.
And as you say that, an Alabama player, and I'm going to have to look it up because the name is escaping me, a safety has signed an endorsement deal with Milo's Sweet Tea.
Oh,
So
I didn't know
Alabama nicked that in the bud right immediately. They saw Auburn going with Milo's and said, we got to do the same. By the way, the Milo's Bowl, the Iron Bowl will be the Milo's Bowl this coming up. Malachi
The Iron
Moore,
Bowl brought to you by Milo.
sophomore Malachi Moore announced his partnership with Milo's, who, by the way, great burgers. Nobody knows. Everybody knows the Sweet Tea.
Milo's?
It's a burger joint in Alabama that makes Sweet Tea. The Sweet Tea is nationwide famous.
Yeah.
The burgers are amazing.
Since when? What?
Since always.
I didn't know this was just like a place you could go.
Yeah, that's what, I grew up in Birmingham, so this was just
Yeah.
right down the road from my place. I don't think there's a location outside of Alabama as far as the burger joint goes.
Is it like a
Mind-blowing.
fast food place?
Yeah, no, it's burgers and fries, chicken tenders, apple pies, and then you obviously get the sweet tea when you're there. For whatever reason, the sweet tea is nationwide. You can find it at any store,
Yeah.
but it's a burger joint.
It's like the wing place like turns into a bar in Auburn. Like, what's
Oh,
that?
yes, I know exactly what, Big Kahuna or something.
No,
Not
it's
Big Kahuna, that's
there's one in Cool Springs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I forget what it's called. That's gonna haunt me.
But no Tennessee players have signed with Milo's Sweet Tea. But you're seeing a lot of different varieties in terms of where they're signing. And Tennessee, it was sort of cool to see the innovation of Grant Furking, the wide receiver
Yeah,
who owns a company,
I agree.
endorsing his own teammates. He's a guy who, as a walk-on, has made plenty of money completely legally on that company while being a Tennessee football player. Now you're seeing him give endorsement deals to his teammates. Velus Jones Jr. in there. And then a guy like Latrell Bumpus out of Hardin County High School in Savannah, Tennessee, being endorsed by seemingly a mom and pop, I think kind of a car shop called Facelift.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So
Cool.
you're seeing so many varieties of different endorsement deals. A Tennessee State basketball player with a $2 million deal as the son of Master P. And he didn't get that deal because he's a Tennessee State basketball player. You could probably say that.
Yeah, it's fair.
But
That's my favorite story so far too.
yeah, it's the
Of
biggest one locally.
Him having because he's given back to the community and having basketball camps.
Oh,
as
yeah.
a part of this deal in the city of Nashville.
It benefits everybody.
That is what this is about. Reinvesting the money these kids are getting and making it better for the sport and better for the individual communities these players are a part of. I hope that becomes the face of NIL and what NIL ends up being, but I don't know if you agree with me on this or not. I think the underworld of NIL and the behind the scenes aspect of this is going to be the larger topic moving forward. What we don't hear about NIL and coaches saying, hey, you come here and I'll hook you up with insert company here. Like, I think Pandora's box has just been opened. What we've seen so far is not the part of NIL that's really going to make a difference in college athletics and specifically in college football. It's going to be the part where now the recruiting aspect of it is what's going to make this super interesting. And I don't think anybody knows what the next step is. I think at this point, players announcing these deals and the camp aspect of it, giving back to the community is great. I hope that continues to happen. I hope that's, step one of this becoming a benefit for college athletics. But the dark side of this, I think, is the bigger topic. And we still, I don't think we're going to know about that maybe until this time next year, about one full recruiting cycle, how that works and what it looks like.
That's going to be so interesting to watch. Yeah, like you said, the recruiting cycle, what those final, 247 team rankings are going to be at the end of the 2021 or 2022 rather recruiting class, because this thing is impacting it on so many different levels. Like, you talk about leveling the playing field in some cases. social media and marketing and communication teams of college football programs and college basketball programs, really any sport, will have more of a hand in recruiting than they have ever had.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about how many 4- and 5-star kids show up to campuses thinking they're a lock to start, regardless of where they go. You know, maybe if you go to Alabama.
Tennessee, all of them.
Right. And many of them are sold
honestly,
that, right?
Yeah.
But with NIL now, you're looking at kids showing up on campus and probably getting endorsement and marketing deals before they even take a practice rep, right? In terms of these blue chip guys that have been making headlines. It's going to take focus now for a kid to be able to kind of get past that stuff, focus on his development as a college football player, and simultaneously kind of make the most financially of his image and likeness. And when it comes to recruiting, how many players are going to be recruited more based off of that than based off what they can do with him on the football field?
I mean, I really think this is the most dynamic time in recruiting that we've seen in our lifetimes in college sports. Specifically college football, let's say that. Because A, you have name, image, and likeness, and B, you have playoff expansion. So recruiting is going to be much more of a level playing field, in my opinion, between NIL and between the expanded playoff, because you can sell more benefits, right? There's only 3 teams that could sell the fact that they've been in 2/3 of the playoffs: Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Those 3 teams have a huge leg up in being able to say, hey, we're the 3 teams that are in the playoff, and then you insert the 4th team that's going to join the 3 of us. Now you're going to have Cincinnati and Memphis being able to sell, look, you come here and win your conference, not only are you in the playoff, but you're going to make a lot of money doing it. So, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see how teams like that are able to adjust, how a Tennessee is able to not only sell early playing time, but you're going to be able to tell a company, hey, you know, not only can I endorse you and can I market myself, you know, with you as a company, I'm going to be able to do that in year 1 because I'm going to play year 1. So how does that impact the way Tennessee can market freshmen? Like, you can say, if you're Josh Heupel now, hey, as a freshman, you've got more chance to make money than you do as a freshman at Alabama, because you're not going to play as a freshman in Alabama. Here, you can tell insert company here, insert booster here, hey, I'm cornerback 1. Whatever. If Tennessee gets a 5-star corner, they're starting day 1.
And they're getting a deal before that first
And they're getting
start.
a deal before that first start because they're saying, look, I'm going to play as a freshman, so you should pay me as a freshman. I think that's the part of this we haven't really talked about yet.
Discussing the impact of NIL on college football at every level, recruiting, the transfer portal, which we'll get into here on the other side. Want to hear from you, 615-737-1045. Anthony in Spring Hill will lead us off on the other side. We'll be right back. Lucas and Will, this is 1045, The Zone.
BetMGM welcomes you to Showtime with a risk-free first bet up to
players, especially if they're making a little bit of money wherever they are currently. Anthony from Spring Hill will lead us off, 615-737-1045. Anthony, what's up?
Hey, man, what's going on? Enjoy the show.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, I tell you what, it's just another bullet in the gun. Everybody's looking for something that's going to level the playing field. I actually think this gives somebody else, this gives the kids and the families another choice. And if I'm a small school, I would be absolutely ecstatic. You know, Alabama, or let's say even a really small school that's not like an Alcorn State, just a really small school. But now, if Alcorn State has something else in the gun, I have 3 sons. I would really have to consider that, you know. And I think this may do more to level the playing field than we realize. Now, the other thing to realize is, no matter what, we've just moved the bar. So they're going to go over it, and they'll reconsider, and somebody's going to step over the line, and et cetera. But I think this is going to be great, and I think it's going to be really good. That the other 99% that do not get to go to college, that not get to go to the pros, that have put a lot of work in, or just giving to the schools, I think it's nice that they're able to have another choice and to possibly cash in on that. I'll listen. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, and it's a great point, especially as it pertains to, he mentioned Alcorn State, HBCUs.
Exactly.
Who are already getting more attention. Deion Sanders and Eddie George, I mean, these dominated headlines before NIL came into effect last week. And now you just saw Tennessee State men's basketball player sign a $2 million deal. Think about what Eddie George and Deion Sanders can pitch to kids in living rooms. And not just with those two schools, now the way other HBCUs are going to approach coaching hires and trying to go a similar route to bring kids in and represent historically black colleges and universities.
I totally agree. And I think this makes the biggest difference probably in the transfer portal than it even does just in normal recruiting. Because if you've got a kid sitting behind a couple of 5-stars that's not getting snaps, that's not playing, well, they can go make money playing somewhere else and play right away. I think this is going to increase the amount of transfers that we're seeing already in the transfer portal with the one-time transfer rule in college athletics. That, to me, is the biggest impact. But I think you're right. I mean, if you can go to Tennessee State and make $2 million, I don't care who your dad is, who your family is. That's a big deal. I mean, that is at least a proof of concept for at Tennessee State. Penny Collins, former Belmont basketball point guard, a legend in this city, taking Belmont to its first NCAA tournament back in the day. It's a proof of concept for him to be able to sell. Look, you want to come play for me? You got a chance to be a millionaire. That's a big deal at a lot of these places. Yes, anytime you get an extra bullet in the gun of Nick Saban, of Dabo Swinney, who, by the way, said he would quit college football.
Still
if
waiting,
this ever
Dabo.
happened. Yes, still waiting on that resignation letter. The smartest coaches are going to use their resources in the smartest ways. I mean, we saw this in the year of COVID with only virtual recruiting, right? I mean, it's just the best coaches are going to find the way to use this in the best way because that's what the best coaches do. But if this is going to help level the playing field for a Josh Heupel, I think it makes a difference. I think it might close the gap a little bit. Yeah, there's still a gap. You still have to coach. You still have to recruit the top talent. If you can't recruit, you're not going to be able to use this to your advantage either. But it's going to make it easier, I think, especially for the group of 5 and mid-major schools.
So I'm thinking about it with the transfer portal because you make a good point about players being more willing to go somewhere where they can make more money than wherever they are. But what about the flip side of that? We already know the transfer portal is incredibly oversaturated with players, right? Like the supply far outweighs the demand right now.
Yeah.
And Tennessee just saw, 2 of what were going to be starting defensive linemen enter the transfer portal, and Greg Emerson and Darrell Middleton, who you and I have been talking. Darrell Middleton's probably the best defensive lineman on this roster. Was a team leader for this group, expected to be a fixture in that rotation this season. He's in the transfer portal. For a guy like Darrell Middleton, who has put some good tape out, I don't know how many teams are going to be clamoring for a guy like him or Emerson. But what about the guy that before was saying, I'm not really getting the playing time I want here. I'm 3rd, 4th in the depth chart. I want to go and see what I can do at this other program. Because everything is centered around the best shot at getting to the pros, right? Whether it's late rounds, undrafted free agents. How many players now say, I'm not really getting the playing time I want at Tennessee or at Kentucky or whatever, but I got this deal with this local car dealership. I'm making some cash. okay, looking at my options, do I transfer to a Toledo where I'm going to play a lot and maybe get more tape on and be able to increase my chances of getting to the league? But I'm not going to be making the money at Toledo that I'm going to be making in an SEC market. Maybe I just stick it out at this bigger program where I'm already making money and have a little more of a safety net if the NFL thing doesn't work
Right.
out. That was the first way I looked at it when it came to the transfer portal.
Well, let's look at it this way. How does the city that a school is in make a difference?
I think it makes a big difference.
Tennessee State is obviously not a huge football program. It's FCS. Eddie George, there's excitement around the program. You can market the city of Nashville. I mean, a school like Temple, you're marketing Philadelphia. You're not a big school, but you're in a huge market. Florida International, what about these schools that are obviously not big programs? They're not big. Georgia State and Atlanta. I mean, I feel like when you have a bigger market, it's going to be like big market NFL teams, big market NBA teams that have a leg up, just having more money in the city that they're in. If I'm Eddie George, I'm not just selling, hey, come get an endorsement to be at Tennessee State. Come get an endorsement to play in Nashville, right? We've seen Vanderbilt use this pitch now for the last couple of years. It kind of started under Derek Mason, where they say the city, the degree, the conference.
Right. But at that point, it's just come live in Nashville.
Right.
Which as a college football player,
sold.
sure. But as a college football player at Vanderbilt, how much of a selling point is that really when so much of your life is dominated by
Well, the
practice
SEC it isn't as much.
Right,
Because
exactly.
if you're good enough to play in the SEC, that's not as big of a deal to you. Like, if you want
Right.
to play in the SEC, then the
Just
city
where you're
where
gonna
you
live.
are isn't.
Yeah.
That recruit, I don't think, cares
But
as
that pitch
much.
has a whole new meaning now.
It does. I think it's a bigger deal for the more, not blue chip recruit, right? The guy that's, I think this is more of a conversation about Tennessee State than it is Vanderbilt. Because that guy is paying more attention to, hey, I can still go to Nashville. Because so many of these schools are not in as big of cities, right? It's smaller market. We talk about Alcorn State was the example the caller gave. Nashville has a leg up over a place like that to be able to make more money in this. This is more a conversation about Tennessee State for me than it is Vanderbilt, because if you want to go play in the SEC, you're not caring as much about, where am I going to live? It's where do I have the best chance of being an NFL draft pick?
We're going to keep this conversation going on the other side. 615-737-1045. How has name, image, and likeness impacted not just recruiting, but the transfer portal? What will it have a bigger impact on? Leveling the playing field when it comes to recruiting, or more players hitting the transfer portal? Maybe it's less because guys are making some cash wherever they are. Let us know. 615-737-1045. We are live on 1045 The Zone TV, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling in for Buck Rising on this Monday, July 5th. This is 1045 The Zone.
I'm Jody Mack with a CBS Sports.
Parts to get everything you need to stay safe while traveling.
tomorrow at 10 a.m. Talking name, image, and likeness on this Monday. Hope you've enjoyed your long 4th of July weekend and the impact it will have when it comes to leveling the playing field and recruiting, not just in the Power 5, but the Group of 5, HBCUs, and in the transfer portal, which we'll dive into more Vols specific. Grant Ramey will join us of 247 Sports at 12:20. But, I mean, just at its base level, Will, recruiting, transfer portal, which one of the two do you think it has a bigger impact on when it comes to name, image, and likeness?
I think in a way they're one and the same. Because I think recruiting the transfer portal is going to become just as important as recruiting high school players.
But is it not already?
Well, no. I mean, you're right about that. I mean, starting this year, it's become – for Tennessee, it's more important to recruit the transfer portal.
Brandon Turnage is as important as a commit as Josh Heupel can get right now.
And we're going to get into this later with Grant Ramey as well, coming up in the final hour. But, I mean, you could make the argument that that's the most important addition Tennessee's made this entire offseason is Brandon Turnage, the guy they get from Alabama who had a cup of coffee at Georgia. Now he's at Tennessee.
And espresso, like one of those mini cups of coffee.
Like the Cuban coffees that are just like that much. You can see me on Zone TV. I think recruiting, it's going to be more important for high school athletes just because there's more of them, honestly. But at the same time, you've got to recruit your own roster now. And that's going to become getting guys signed with different businesses in your city. Like, I don't know, how much do you think coaches are going to play a part in this? Because I see coaches just being like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. Like, and having a guy on their staff that is the NIL guy.
Oh, absolutely. Every athletic department is going to have that.
But I see, like, guys like a Butch Jones, like, becoming way too involved with NIL. Like, hey, let's get you hooked up with, like, insert, like, company here. Like, the coaches I had, albeit on a much smaller scale, running track at Tennessee, they don't want any part of it. They're just like, no, show up to practice on time and you just run.
Right.
Like be ready for practice and just handle all that on your own. Like if you want to do that, go talk to compliance, like you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But there's also an aspect of it where in order to get the best players, you're going to have to recruit to this. So it's going to be interesting to see because I see a lot of coaches spending way too much time on NIL and trying to do way too much with it. And then I see some coaches just not worrying about it. It's saying, look, you handle this on your own time. Make money if you want. If you come here, you're going to have those opportunities, and it'll be great. But that's not my problem.
Which, when it comes to managing your football team in season, I feel like maybe that's the right way to go about it. Because when it comes to the impact coaches are going to have in dealing with this, it's going to be in the locker room and the indifferences. And, like, I heard Braden Alex Apple from 7 to 11 earlier talking about, I think Braden has said he doesn't see that as an issue. Everybody's bringing it up. And I would disagree with that. I absolutely think it'll be an issue because this is just so new. Like, it's not an issue in the Titans locker room. It's not an issue that Ryan Tannehill's making this much more than Laurel Murchison, who's still on a rookie contract as kind of a late-round defensive lineman, rotational guy. But it's the NFL. This is college football where we're seeing this for the first time ever, and these are 18-year-old and 19-year-old kids. There's going to be disagreements, and kids are going to get upset with the other for getting this endorsement deal over him or the center snapping the ball to the quarterback that's making $200K more than he is. Like, I don't see how there couldn't be issues when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues of just, like, what guys are dating, like, your exes on football teams.
Right.
Like, these are not fully matured individuals.
Yeah,
They're kids.
Think about if this was happening to you when you were running track, and I certainly wasn't an athlete at Tennessee, but if I was 18 or 19 and anything remotely like this happening to me, I think I would have kind of a skewed view of what I deserve and what my teammates deserve and other things.
I can tell you that this is an issue because I saw it. Because in non-head count sports where you're being given a percentage of a scholarship, it's already an issue.
Just for scholarship.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Anyone saying that this is not going to be an issue is naive and has not been in a locker room in a college sport. Now, I always have to preface this because people will be like, oh, well, how could you possibly think running cross country and football are the same thing? I don't. I'm just speaking from my experience that when a certain guy, say, we had teammates that were on a 10% scholarship or on books. That's a very common thing in cross country and track.
And just non-revenue sports in general.
Right. It's non-revenue sports. Like, there is a salary cap. Like, I don't think people who don't watch football and basketball understand that this is the majority of college athletics. You have a salary cap, and you are giving percentages of scholarships to different athletes. For men's track and field, I believe we had 12 and a half scholarships that you're being given among like 40 guys. Because of Title IX, the women's team had, I think, 17 or 18 scholarships they could give because of quality. But that's not, relevant to this topic. But so you're giving like, all right, this guy is a certain time. He's run this well. He's this good of an athlete. We're going to give you 25%, insert athlete here. You're on 5% or 10%. And then for this guy, we're just going to pay for his books. Yeah, it's called just being on books. You're technically a scholarship athlete, but your books are just paid for every year. So if you're beating the guy, say you're a walk-on, you're not getting any percentage, and you're beating the guy that's on a 25, or say you've got a good high school athlete that's on 50%, but he's drinking all the time and isn't running well. You're like, hey, coach, why is this guy on 25% and I'm on books? Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's part of the recruiting process where some athletes would, at different schools, like I would be offered more of a percentage over here, but I chose to be a walk-on at Tennessee because I love Tennessee. I'd rather go to the school I want to go to and just pay to be a, academic regular student. But then that's it. That is already an issue in college athletics. Now it's an issue in revenue sports as well. Like, hey, coach, this quarterback's getting paid $250K a year. I'm starting over him because I was a 3-star that's, grinded my way to the top or whatever, and I'm the starting quarterback and this guy isn't. So, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
That's absolutely an issue, and it already is, and it's going to make the transfer portal, like you said earlier, even more saturated and oversaturated than it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think college teammates at SEC football programs, that there's not jealousy in the locker room because of playing time, you're delusional. So if you think that's not going to lead to jealousy over actual money being made, I feel like you're delusional. I feel like there's no way. So that's where it comes down to the coaches to manage these things. And on the flip side of that, when it comes to recruits coming in, we already see 4- and 5-star talents. I mentioned it earlier, that show up expecting to start. They were it at their hometown. Everybody showed up to watch them play. They were the stars on offense, on defense, and on special teams. And then we've talked so much about how the de-recruitment in college football has had to go down a little bit because kids can up and leave the transfer portal, and that's kind of been the trend. Well, I think this could lead to way more recruiting busts than we've ever seen in college football, because how many kids are going to get on campus? It's going to take focus for kids to be able to, and maturity, to get past all that stuff and focus on their development as a future NFL player. Now, I understand the NFL bag is infinitely better than whatever the NIL bag is going to be, but I'm talking about viewing this through the eyes of an 18-year-old freshman in college who is making $100, $200K a year playing big-time college football. How much easier is it going to be for that kid to maybe not do the little things and everything it takes to get to the next level when everybody's gassing you up? You've got the 20,000 Twitter followers and the endorsement deals, and maybe you're not playing that great, but who cares? You're living your best life. You're making a ton of money. I think you're going to see a lot of 4- or 5-star blue chip guys come into school and probably disappoint.
Well, and what's motivating a lot of these kids? If they're already getting paid, you see this a lot in contract years for pro athletes. When a pro athlete has a year left, they ball out. What did Corey Davis just do last year in a contract year for the Titans? Contract year Corey Davis was the best version ever of Corey Davis. Yes, there are other variables. There are other factors. He was healthier than he's ever been. Ryan Tannehill was there for a full season and healthy for a full season. A.J. Brown is one of the best receivers in football. Obviously, there are more variables at play. I'm not naive enough to just say, oh, hey, look, Corey Davis was only good last year because of a contract year. But it's a motivating factor. Marcelo Zuna for the Braves last year was almost the MVP of the National League, hit 320, was the home run champion in the National League. He's on a contract year. Comes back this year, and before he gets hurt / is now suspended for off-the-field issues, he's hitting like 220. This is absolutely a thing. What's going to motivate a lot of these guys to actually win? There's already so much of college athletes just trying, especially in college basketball. John Calipari's kids are not motivated to win as a team as much as they are be there for a year, go to the NBA, and then get paid a lot of money to be a backup point guard in the NBA. what's keeping college athletes, the 5-star at Tennessee, who's on a 5-7 team, the kid from Tennessee who decides to stay home and play for his home state, that's cool. But like, what's motivating, Eric Gray last season to put in a full effort when he's already getting paid more than any of his teammates because he's the only good player? I mean, like, I don't think there's as much motivation to win. It's just going to be, hey, let me get mine and let me get paid.
And that's where a guy like John Calipari, and he does a good job of this every year, right? You see it, not last year, but you see it every year at Kentucky. The arching process of him getting this team together of a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans who are about to be first-round picks in the NBA draft and making them a team before they get to the NCAA tournament. They always take the lumps early on, and then they come into form at the SEC tournament and at the NCAA tournament. Now, this past season was an exception. Did John Calipari's struggle just get harder when these kids are now making money on the side as future NBA draft picks? Or is he going to have maybe some of these kids longer than he would normally have them because of name, image, and likeness? Hey, you're making $200,000 a year at Kentucky. Why don't you stick around and refine some things so that you do go in the top 10 and not in the top 20 of the NBA draft?
I think that is the biggest positive about name, image, and likeness. More guys are going to stay in college. Absolutely.
Biggest positive from the perspective of college
the
football
schools,
teams
right?
And coaches.
College football. I think college basketball, the game has been changed here. I really do. Because you look at a guy like Jaden Springer, who had a really disappointing end to his season at Tennessee last year. Keon Johnson, name, image, and likeness or not, is gone after 1 year. He's a top 5, top 10 pick. That dude's not coming back. But Jaden Springer, I think the conversation gets a little bit more interesting. So I saw this. This is another thing I could speak to, just a tangible example of this. And we'll go to break here in a second. I know I don't want to hold us up, but Trevor Bassett, this guy that went viral on Twitter, I interviewed him at this track meet I did over at NBA a couple weeks ago. D2 national champion in the 400 hurdles, the 200, the 100, like D2 NCAA record holder, set the collegiate record at Ashland University. This guy gets 8th at the Olympic trials 2 weeks ago in track and field. Why is this relevant? Well, because last week he specifically in his announcement said, because of name, image, and likeness, I'm coming back for my senior year and not going pro. Because I can make the same amount of money running as a D2 runner as I can as a track athlete professionally, and I'm going to train under the same coach, right? A lot of these track runners, I hate bringing everything back to track, but it's what I know. A lot of these runners can come back and say, look, in these smaller sports, I can make as much in college as I can as a pro. Obviously, that's not going to be the case, probably not, for entry-level basketball players, but you could make the argument that a guy like Jordan Bone a couple years ago, who still hasn't made his debut in the NBA since getting drafted by the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, who did leave early,
He's making more money playing at Tennessee than he is in the G League.
Yeah.
Admiral Schofield,
100%.
Same way. Obviously, he was a senior, so he graduated, wouldn't have had any time left. These second-round picks, like I think about Josh Malone a couple years ago, who left Tennessee when he did. Obviously, that's a extenuating circumstance. Tennessee was on the decline when he left, so maybe he still would have anyway. These like second-round fringe guys are going to start coming back, and you're going to see better college baseball, college basketball. I love it for these juniors and seniors who I think who are 50-50 on the fence. It's going to make the college product a lot better.
The impact this is going to have on the future of college football and basketball, when you look at it in that sense, you can delve from decisions from players within the last year or two, players that have transferred or that have declared early for the draft. Would those guys have thought differently if name, image, and likeness was a thing 6 months ago? And how different would Tennessee football's roster look right now if that were the case? Let us know, 615-737-1045. And it doesn't have to be Tennessee. Anybody that you can think of, a college athlete that had to make a decision, whether it was to transfer out to a smaller school for more playing time, to leave early for the draft, how do you think those decisions would have been impacted if NIL was in effect at that time? And then to that point, how does NIL impact those decisions moving forward? 615-737-1045. Will Bowling, Lucas Panzica with you. This is 104.5 The Zone.
When they talk Titans, you listen. The 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. This afternoon starting at 3, 104.5 The Zone.
There has never been a better time to find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbooks. Hey, it's Lucas Panzica from the Buck Rising Show and Blaine and Mickey. Right now, new customers have a chance to win $100 in free bets when they place a $1 wager on the fighter from Ireland to get his revenge in the main event on July 10th. Just use bonus code Lucas100 when you make your first bet to take advantage of this offer. Get ready to start betting with confidence and turning knockouts into payouts. Sign up today and discover BetMGM's daily promotions, boosted odds specials, and more. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code Lucas100 to win $100 in free bets if that fighter from Ireland is victorious. Get in the ring with the king and enjoy fight night more than ever. It's always showtime at BetMGM. New customer offer, paid in free bets. Must be 21 years or older. Must be in Tennessee to bet. Visit BetMGM.com for a full list of terms and conditions. For problem gambling support, call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Switching your car insurance to Geico is both easy and could save you hundreds. It's the best of both worlds. Like a corgi who does household chores. A chorgi.
Who's a good chorgi? Look at those carpet lines. You're the good chorgi. Yes, you are. The carpet is perfect.
Geico. Easy and savings. The best of both worlds.
Fire protection, carbon monoxide protection, medical pendants, and alerts. Everyone has different reasons for needing a security system. And you may have been told insurance sometimes requires it. I think we would all agree that the main reason for needing a security system is to keep the bad guys out of your home or business. My name is Shooter Stein, president of NCA, National Certified Alarms. NCA was founded in 1997 right here in Middle Tennessee. We're locally owned, so you can talk to folks you know, not to people at some far-off company in another state or country. And the best part? Landline monitoring starts at only $9.95 a month, and our wireless monitoring starts at $19.95 a month. At NCA, we have no long-term contracts. NCA can convert your existing security system or install a new one for you. For more details on rates and services, please visit our website at nca.cc or give us a call at 615-777-7NCA. That's 615-777-7622. License number 645.
With this red-hot real estate market right now, one of the most important decisions you're ever going to make is who to trust when it's time to sell your home. Hey, this is Dawn Davenport from 3HL, and if you're ready to take advantage of this market, Mark Spain Real Estate is the most trusted real estate team in the U.S. This is crazy. They've earned over 5,000 five-star reviews, and their guaranteed offer makes selling your home easy and stress-free. No showings, no open houses, no stress at all. You don't have to worry about the hassle of constant cleaning, and you don't have to make costly repairs. Sell your home hassle-free with the strongest cash offer in the industry. The Wall Street Journal ranks Mark Spain Real Estate the #1 real estate team in the U.S. for closed transactions for the 4th year in a row. They know what matters most. That's a quick sale, maximum profit. No showings, no open houses, no stress. It's that simple. Find out what Mark Spain's guaranteed offer would be on your home. No obligation. Go to markspain.com today, 855-299-SOLD, markspain.com, and start packing.
Who decided you have to be on the golf course to get a mulligan? Download the TwinSpires Sportsbook app right now, and you'll unlock a good old-fashioned mulligan up to $1,000 if your opening bet misses the win column. Just use code FREE1000 and take your swing with up to a $1,000 risk-free bet at TwinSpires Sportsbook. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Offer valid for new players only. Must be 21 and over and physically present in Tennessee to bet. For help with a gambling problem, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-97.
program for a smaller school in a smaller conference for more playing time, or to leave early for the draft, and the things that could potentially keep that player in that town, at that school, and in that market, and try to develop a little further before they hit the draft. And join the conversation. 615-737-1045. Rick in Hendersonville will join us next. Rick, how's it going?
Oh, doing well today, guys. Listen, I've got to give a shout-out to you, Lucas, and Will. Since you guys teamed up filling in for people, I'm going to step right up to the plate and say you two are the best two hosts on 104.5 The Zone, period. I love hearing you guys talk. You talk sports. You get straight to the point. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I hope it proves to be much more successful for both of you.
Thank you, Rick.
Now,
appreciate it.
Kevin,
the
if you
thing
could
I want to mention about the NIL, and nobody is talking about it, is in the old days, as of, June 30th, 31st, however many days there are in June, kids were getting scholarships to better their lives from an educational standpoint. Right now, you've got a work effort going into the sport that they're taking part in, and now you're going to have a work effort to see how much money they can make, which I don't have a problem with them making money, no doubt about it. But how does that affect their education? You got a quarterback making $250,000. He knows he's going to go pro, whether he stays in school for 4 years or whether he wants to move on. Then you've got the poor guy that might be making $5,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he might stay in school, but while he's in school, what's happening to his education? I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for the call, Rick, and I appreciate the kind words, of course. Look, I think this actually incentivizes athletes to finish their education. I think this is actually in favor of education because if you have let's continue with the Kentucky basketball example. You have the 5-star point guard, the 4-star guard that maybe doesn't have a great freshman year. We've seen this a lot recently with Kentucky basketball. Guys that have been more busts than been really good freshman players. They're going to, if they're coming back to continue making money in college, then they're continuing to get an education. I think this incentivizes, hey, look, you're getting paid now to go to college, so you're going to go to college longer. I think this is actually in favor of the educational part of this, especially, too, if you have a junior quarterback. Let's continue with the Tennessee example. Bryce Thompson, corner for Tennessee, leaves as a junior, doesn't get drafted in this past year's NFL draft. Yes, there were extenuating circumstances. His head coach left. He was a Jeremy Pruitt guy, but this was a guy that's probably going pro either way. The way Tennessee was last year, they weren't very good. He wants a better situation. And look, let's face it, for the guys that are from lower income families in college football and college basketball, getting paid and being able to support their families is a big part of going pro earlier. Now they can continue to do that and continue to get an education. I think this actually is going to help a lot of kids stay in school and finish their degrees instead of leaving earlier just because of a need-based incentive to support their families and get that first pro contract.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to individuals and kids and how seriously they are willing to take that part because let's be honest, the majority of your higher profile high school recruits across the country, unless they're special cases, the majority of them are not going to be picking their schools based on education.
Right.
They're just not. They're going based on playing time and how much they will make for NIL and how much of that can prepare them for the NFL. Education's going to take a back seat in a lot of these recruiting pitches. The thing is, it kind of always has.
No,
it's always been about getting you
honest.
to the next level.
Yes.
And so this is just the thing to do. This is what has to happen for athletes that are making billions of dollars for the NCAA and these institutions. And however seriously they take education is going to come down to them. It is. And that's a good point. Like you mentioned about guys coming back. And maybe this is a bad example because Trey Smith was always renowned for his maturity and taking stuff like education seriously and being in the community. But Trey Smith had a big decision about a year and a half ago now of whether or not to come back to Tennessee for his senior season. Ultimately, he said, using the words of Peyton Manning, that he was going to come back. I think largely because he wanted to improve his draft stock. He wanted to show NFL scouts and coaches he can play another full year healthy with blood clots not being an issue. Mm-hmm. He did that and still almost slipped out of the draft. He got picked in the 6th round by the Kansas City Chiefs. By the way, all reports are he is impressing with the Kansas City Chiefs at rookie minicamp and OTAs and so on. But that's beside the point. And again, maybe it's a bad example. But if Trey Smith had that decision to make and NIL was in effect at that time, January, February or so of 2020, how easy would that decision have been for Trey Smith to come back and play out his final year, get his degree, and then go into the NFL with the added bonus of showing scouts he can do it for another 12 games with no medical hiccups? And then NIL on top of all that. I mean, think about the money Trey Smith would have made last year. Right. The impact he had in the community, leading marches and protests on campus, the student body, the Knoxville community. I mean, he was the face of that program. He was the ambassador of Tennessee football and everything, his story behind him, the passing of his mother. Trey Smith, I think you can make an argument, Will, that Trey Smith could have been the highest paid player on Tennessee football's roster last season.
I would definitely agree. I know David Ubben at The Athletic has a piece, or he wrote about how Jarrett Garantano, just from his Twitter, could have made $130,000 last season, going by the rate of dollars per follower, which I can't believe is a thing that we talk about and measure now, but it's true. It's the world we live in.
46,000 followers right now, by the way.
I don't think Trey Smith, though, is going to be the norm, right? Trey Smith is the anomaly. When we talked about Henry To'oTo'o leaving, and I came on Buck's show and we had the discussion of having pride in where you play and being more old-fashioned and taking pride in the power tee and the orange and the Vol, the tradition of Tennessee.
Trey Smith was the exception in all of those conversations.
Absolutely. Trey Smith is like I would be if I actually could do anything, if I had any hand-eye coordination whatsoever. Like being a Tennessee guy and having pride in where you're from and representing your home state. John Fulkerson, another guy who's the exception to the rule. I think either way, obviously we saw Trey Smith did come back without the financial incentive. I think Trey Smith either way was going to be a Vol last year. Obviously he was because he didn't have the money, so it didn't play a role. I think this is going to be a bigger difference for the guys that they don't care about the name on their helmet, or they don't care about the tradition of where they're playing. They're just trying to get paid. I think this is going to help, the guy from, Phoenix who comes to Tennessee because he can play day one. Taven Jackson, a guy like that, who by all accounts impressed at an Elite 11 camp over the last week, according to Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. We're going to talk about that coming up as well. Guys like that who have no sentimental tie to the University of Tennessee or their respective institutions, those guys are the ones I think that are going to be more incentivized to stick around. Comment on YouTube, by the way, from Kokalak, I want to say. I don't know. On YouTube. It says Kyler Murray would have stayed at A&M and eventually played baseball with NIL. It's a good point. I mean, how many of these transfers? Baker Mayfield leaving Texas Tech? If he's got the promise of NIL, or does it incentivize him to leave earlier and go somewhere where he can start and, tell a company, hey, I'm playing as QB1 at insert school here, so pay me like a QB1. It's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, the Kyler Murray, that is a good point by Kokalak. He would have stayed at Texas A&M and eventually played baseball if NIL was a thing. 615-737-1045. Jamie is in Goodlettsville. Jamie, what's up?
Yeah, guys, thanks for taking my call. I could probably spend the whole segment with you, but let me narrow it down to 2 points. And if I could get your opinion on those and hang up and listen. Number one, let's say I'm a 5-star running back from the Atlanta area, and I have a booster that is offering me to come there for name, image, and likeness. but there's a booster at the University of Tennessee that offers me significantly more money. What is to keep me from going to the University of Tennessee for 1 year, collecting that check, and then transferring the following year to Georgia, hooking back up with that booster, and now I have 2 paydays? That being the first scenario. The other, let's say I'm a booster and I have $100,000 a year that I donate to the athletic department at the University of Tennessee, we'll say, and now I've got $50,000 of that money tied up in NIL. Now that's a write-off because obviously for tax purposes that's advertising. But now I only have $50,000 to donate to the university athletic department. What happens to your lower-level non-revenue producing programs? We're seeing universities across the country already start to chop them, and I'm worried about that as much as anything. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and have a good day.
It's 2 good points. First and foremost, I think there's going to be offset language, and these guys are signing contracts with these companies, right? So if I'm Big Jim Haslam, and I'm trying to get a kid to be the face of Pilot, gas stations or whatever, part of the deal that you would sign would probably require that you play at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are going to be signing contracts that has language that's going to, that's going to give you different rules on, hey, I'm paying you if you're playing here, you transfer somewhere else, that deal is null and void, and you forfeit the money that I would pay you. Probably. I mean, again, we don't know. I would assume that's the case, though, that if a booster has enough interest to bring you to Tennessee, if you're a kid from the Atlanta area, to go along with that example, then, if you transfer, hey, see ya, I'm not paying you anymore. It's not like you're going to have 2 deals at once.
Yeah, but that's where education is such a huge part of that for these kids. Now, I'm not talking about education, college degree, education about this topic.
Sure.
And about how far you can go, because that scenario probably has already played out in a few 18-year-old minds. That Jamie's, well, this school is
hey, can I collect a couple checks?
Yeah, this school really wants me. Maybe if I just go there and transfer there, the transfer portal's a thing. Yeah, and it's going to create kind of, I don't want to say poisonous situations like that, but like I think it was the wise Biggie that said, "More money, more problems." Like, schools are hiring compliance people, not just to get through the language and stuff, but to deal with these kinds of situations as well, to make sure kids are educated on these things, because they are going to be, contracted employees now by these businesses with these endorsement deals.
Right.
There's a lot that goes with that.
Well, I think Jamie makes a really good point, saying if I'm paying a kid, $50,000, that's money that might not be going to an athletic department that you would have donated to, athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to make fundraising a little bit more interesting, because what's keeping me from just giving the kid money? Now, granted, a lot of this is already happening, and now it's just legal.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people that are already getting paid for, hey, come sign autographs or whatever. Of course, there's coaches hooking up a guy with with something to get them to a certain school. Now it's just legal, so it's it's in the quote unquote free market. So a lot of this is already happening, so it's not going to take away from fundraising. But for the companies and the businesses that are just getting into the ground floor of this, yeah, I think it's a realistic question from Jamie. Say, look, what's keeping me from, instead of donating, $20,000 a year to UT, what's keeping me from donating that straight to a quarterback that I want playing and having a more tangible benefit of, now I know exactly where my money's going. I can watch where my money's going on the football field, instead of, maybe this will be facilities or a renovation of a stadium one day, or maybe I'm paying for, Tony Vitello's new contract. Maybe now I can just pay for him to keep his left fielder. I think it's a valid question that we don't really know the answer to yet.
Yeah, and you're right. This has been happening. It has, whether signing autographs or what have you, but schools have just never been able to utilize it in a on the table kind of way.
And we don't get a video game out of it now, and now we might.
But assurances of what schools can do for players, when we talk about leveling the playing field, assurances of what they can do for players' brands at this point can be more impactful than what schools can do for players on the field, playing time, development, etc. That's where the biggest change is coming.
Haven't we heard the word brand more in the last month?
Well,
than we ever have. What does that mean?
Yeah, you're going to keep hearing it too.
I hate it.
Ed is on the road, 615-737-1045 to join the conversation. What's up, Ed?
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. A previous caller hit on a couple of subjects that I also wanted to discuss with a slightly different take. He is absolutely correct. Non-revenue producing sports have been getting whacked for years now. And given the financial difficulties brought on by the last year and a half of COVID protocols, that situation could, possibly get worse. New sources of revenue are going to be tough for some of these college athletic departments if we pull off the 12-team BCS playoff. I would, or not BCS, but 12-team playoff. I would love to see some of that money be set aside for some of the non-revenue producing sports. Number one, and number two. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, a scholarship is a one-year renewable sort of contract, right? So are we going to see the scholarship situation tied in with some of these contracts that the players are going to sign to make money off their likeness? Are we going to see multi-year deals now? And maybe with things put in the contract, like, if you leave after a certain period of time, you pay it back or whatever. So there's a whole lot of different things that are up in the air right now. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Ed. And we'll hit this on the other side as well, Lucas. But I think this is why schools are smart, like Tennessee, having a partnership. Having a brand NIL partnership with Altius is what Tennessee's doing. You've seen LSU. They're always really smart in their social media and what they do. That they've had the NIL SU kind of brand, which is really, really smart. This is where schools are smart to regulate this as much as possible. Where if you're bringing in a company that is going to endorse, Cade Mays, probably Tennessee's most marketable player. I think we could agree moving forward into this football season. Local kid, Knoxville, going to be an NFL draft pick next season. Sure. Cade Mays, a logical guy that Tennessee wants to market.
Legacy player, yeah.
For sure. Instead of a company going straight to Cade Mays and sliding in his Twitter DMs, which you're seeing athletes now be like, oh, my DMs are open.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Tennessee, I'm like, no, let me handle this for you. Because then you're bringing in hey, you want to give $25,000 to this kid to, come do a certain amount of appearances? How about you, match that and give it to the athletic department as well?
Yeah, and as far as scholarships being tied in with contracts, there's going to be none of that. Like this is not pay for play. This is not, there's a lot to go into here. Tennessee has specific NIL guidelines. We will dive into some of those on the other side and take your calls. Ralph will lead us off on the other side, 615-737-1045. Lucas Panzica will bowling with you until 3 o'clock right here on 1045 The Zone.
Do you breathe Titans football? Yeah, so do we. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio, 1045 The Zone.
Imagine owning waterfront property in a gated community by the Tennessee River and just minutes from the Pickwick area. Now imagine that your 1 acre waterfront lot could be purchased for just under $40,000. That's right, 1 acre of waterfront property for less than $40,000. Our final release date is Saturday, July 24th only, so register now. Call 844-21-OASIS for a $1,000 closing credit or visit bigriverfront.com now. That's 844-216-2747 or bigriverfront.com.
Hey, it's Red Bryant for Twin Spire Sportsbook. Who decided that you have to be on the golf course to get a mulligan? Download the Twin Spire Sportsbook app right now, and you'll unlock an old-fashioned mulligan up to $1,000 if your opening bet misses the win column. Just use code FREE1000 and take your swing with up to a $1,000 risk-free bet at Twin Spire Sportsbook. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Offer valid for new players only. Must be 21 and over and physically present in Tennessee to bet. For help with a gambling problem, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789.
Hi, this is Dr. Lewis. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction and sick of taking pills? Well, we finally have a medical breakthrough that is helping thousands of couples restore normal intimacy in the bedroom. We use the most advanced form of wave therapy, clinically proven to repair blood vessels and increase blood flow. We can now effectively treat the root cause problem of erectile dysfunction. Our technology is science-backed and has been shown by Cambridge University to be highly effective. As a medical doctor, I can say that this technology is the new standard of care for erectile dysfunction.
Thanks, Dr. Lewis. Guys, if you'd like to eliminate your frustrations in the bedroom, call Hillside Medical Clinic right now
Like I would just I've worked with people in the past that like in Knoxville and here who were just like, oh, I just get up at like 4, just prep the whole show. Like, no.
Yeah, what's crazy about that is sports talk where you have to get up at 3:40. Jonathan Schaefer wakes up at 3:45 every morning. So like when the Preds are in the playoffs or something in the first round with an 8 p.m. puck drop where the game really starts at 8:30, you know.
Somebody said, I think it was Braden Gall, actually.
I don't know.
Well,
there's a guy who knows what it's like to do morning radio.
Talking with Braden, who will be on Buck's show. Braden and I will be filling in Wednesday through Friday this week.
We'll have some fun.
He was like, I think it was Braden who was like, is anyone else like kind of sentimental about not having the Western Conference puck drops? Like he said that this past year of like, I kind of miss the 9 o'clock puck drops. I think it was Schaefer was like, are you kidding? Schaefer was like, as someone who works in morning radio, like how could you possibly miss having a 9 o'clock central puck
NHL
drop?
After Dark.
Oh.
Speaking of that, Tampa Bay Lightning set to repeat tonight. I imagine, will sweep the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup final.
Big hockey town we are in Nashville. Where we
Right.
just don't really care.
Really, really fun playoff to end in a sweep, though. That's tough. But talking name, image, and likeness as it pertains to Tennessee. Before we get to Ralph, real quick, we had a caller calling in about how scholarships kind of work, maybe in conjunction with some of these contracts athletes will be receiving. I mean, the point is they're trying to make these things as separate as possible, right? And every school has its own guidelines as it relates to name, image, and likeness. Some are protecting themselves more than others. Maybe those won't be able to benefit from it as much as a school like Tennessee, who on utsports.com released really all the information you need to know, specifically guidelines like the one that sticks out the most to me, and this is David Ubben paraphrasing it. Athletes can use UT marks and logos with express written consent of the school, as opposed to in Arkansas where you can't even wear Arkansas colors.
That's crazy. How long is that going to last? 6 months?
I don't know.
Over,
I have
under
no
6
idea
months?
because everybody's still, these are new waters. Everybody's wading into brand new waters with this thing. So Arkansas is trying to protect itself in that sense of not being allowed to use logos and whatnot.
Crazy.
Tennessee, you can't use Tennessee equipment. You can't sell a game-worn jersey or advertise that with a company if it's Tennessee equipment. But as far as the education with these kids, and again, ties in with what the last caller was talking about with the scholarships, UT provides ongoing NIL-related education to its student-athletes in an effort to assist them in capitalizing on and maximizing their opportunities in a responsible and effective manner. In addition to securing the services and expertise of leading-edge NIL-focused firm Altius Sports Partners, Tennessee Athletics has also worked closely with on-campus experts to enhance the university's 4-credit entrepreneurship minor in UT's Haslam College of Business.
Interesting.
So there you're tying the education in with NIL. It's not just having meetings to tell players this is how you are going to go about these things. It is literally receiving class credit for learning about these things and how they are going to maneuver this new world in college athletics.
It's interesting. I mean, I think I'm a little surprised that, the academic side is okay with that a little bit, honestly. But, I mean, it makes sense. Look, this is where I think, especially from the Tennessee perspective, having Donnie Plowman and Danny White and Randy Boyd and, we've talked a lot about everyone in Tennessee is kind of rowing in the same direction. Yeah. That hasn't been the case, a lot in the past of Tennessee. It's been one of the major obstacles where academics and athletics were kind of hand in hand. Vanderbilt, we've had the same discussion, where academics and athletics kind of butted heads a lot. This is a way where if you can get academics to help athletics, give class credit for something like this, I think it makes a lot of sense and ups your recruiting pitch quite a bit.
Let's talk to Ralph from Laverne, 615-737-1045. What's up, Ralph?
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for taking my call. And kind of leading along those same lines, I was wondering, is there any way that this NIL stuff could be tied to maybe a kid only getting payment if they maintain a certain GPA or if they finish and graduate or that type of thing? Or is that something like maybe the individual company would have to write in there since the school can't have direct ties to it? And that was just my thought on it.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. I appreciate the call. And yeah, I think that's exactly what it would be, what he said there at the end. It would have to come from the company.
Yeah, it definitely would.
And I don't see many companies going that route.
No, I
if
don't
your
either.
GPA dips below a 2.0, this deal is off.
Or even if if you go pro, as a junior, you can't. Yeah, I think they're.
Well, and there's
gonna
going to be a lot of
options
cases.
for that.
These companies want to endorse players that are Tennessee players, not Tennessee players that went on to be a San Francisco 49er.
Yeah.
They want to endorse athletes in this market. I mean, you think about a town like Gatlinburg. It does Gatlinburg a whole lot more good to endorse Tennessee Volunteer Jawan Jennings, not San Francisco 49er Jawan
Well,
Jennings.
does it? I don't know. I mean, I think if you get in on the ground floor with a kid that's a sophomore, you want to continue that relationship when they're in the pros and they're even more marketable.
But is Jawan Jennings more marketable now than he was when he was at Tennessee? That's
Not,
my point.
but-
Like, I see him as that example because
Yeah.
he's a guy, 7th-round pick, who didn't see the field last year, dealt with some injuries with the 49ers. You don't know what his future is with that team. Jawan Jennings was a whole lot more marketable as a college athlete at
that's true.
Tennessee catching Hail Marys than he is right now in San Francisco, even in the Knoxville market.
It's fair. I mean, I'm thinking more on the lines of like a Cam Sutton, who was a 5th, 6th round draft pick, who now has become a good
Consistent
number
starter.
2 corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like a guy like that, his value's gone way up. So it's going to be a case by case thing, I think, for a lot of these guys. And Alvin Kamara, a guy that whole lot more marketable now. The face of Airheads, Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's just so many layers.
There
you know,
is.
and
we spent 2 hours on. I mean, our show's halfway over. This
and
is
you
all
and
we've
I
done.
got
It's
to
been great.
be careful, right? Because we don't want to step into some bounds. Like, we don't have a law background. I think anybody listening knows this. So
Too much school.
we have to kind of follow our lines and look at the guidelines Tennessee is laying out. I mean, they have said they don't want athletes to advertise for alcohol or for adult entertainment, even if the athletes are 21 and over and are
Barstool.
legal age. And Barstool athletes.
Some of my old teammates are Barstool athletes, and I can just see like my coach's head spinning. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me.
Let's grab Matthew in Cool Springs real quick on the way out before we hit a break. Davey Shepard is at the door to join us here in hour 2 or in hour 3. Matthew from Cool Springs talking name, image, and likeness. What's up, Matthew?
Hey, what's up, guys? I think there's a lot of opportunity for kind of week-to-week contracts and even more like 1 or 2 game deals, depending on even the content the player has. I mean, they haven't really defined everything as of yet, as far as I know. I think it'd even be more like a kind of a short-term kind of advertisement where you would entice a player like, what would it cost McCaffrey or maybe one of the players that would skip out on a bowl game to play that bowl game. You could see
That's true.
eyeballs based off content and all that stuff. I mean, I feel like there's a lot. There's companies that are about to strike big with figuring out this formula. So I don't know. I just think that's I see more benefit than bad in keeping players motivated. That's it.
No, thank you, Matthew. That's a great point. And we'll hit on some of that at the top of hour 3. Davey Shepard will join us. We will discuss some big news in Music City. Nashville will host a World Cup qualifier in September. We'll talk about what that means for the city of Nashville and sports in Nashville. Nashville SC season plugs along, and we'll continue this NIL talk, maybe some Titan stuff as well. As we've 2 hours down, 2 to go. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling with you right here on 104.5 The Zone.
When you need to know all the info faster, check out the Zone Daily Podcast with Will Bowling. Available on Google Podcasts, Spotify.
pressure rate fell to less than 10%, which to me underlines just how important Bud Dupree was to his supporting cast, not vice versa. Not how good the supporting cast was to Bud Dupree. I mean, it's a team sport. I hate this argument of, oh, he just has good players around him. Yeah, that's how football works. This is a conversation about Ryan Tannehill that drives me crazy. Oh, Ryan Tannehill is just good because he has Derrick Henry. Okay, well, then is Patrick Mahomes just good because he has the best tight end and the best slot receiver in the NFL?
Yeah.
You could make the argument, like, sure, why not? Like, it's a team sport. Of course they're a product of the people around them.
Let's hear from Titans defensive coordinator Shane Bowen about this because, and the question I believe was about Derek Roberson, but just knowing who he has there outside of Bud Dupree, because a guy like Derek Roberson, suddenly you're looking at a guy who was last year the number 2 pass rusher to Harold Landry to now bumped down to number 4. That probably bodes well for the Titans. But here is defensive coordinator Shane Bowen on Derek Roberson and what else they have as a pass rushing unit.
Yeah, I think Roby's had a really good spring. I do. I've been pleased with him this spring. I think he's came back here and he's changed his approach a little bit. I think he's been more serious about everything, more committed. I think he's getting older. Obviously, that plays a role, man. As you get older, you mature a little bit and you start to figure out what the league is, and you're not just swimming from one meeting to the next. So I think things have slowed down for him in that regard. But the thing I always preach with him is consistency. Like, I need the same guy every day, play in and play out. Like, we got to know who we're putting out there. Like, if I'm going to put you out there for 20 plays, like, I can't have 5 to 10. I don't know what you're going to do, how this is going to be, right? So the consistency with him. But I've been pleased with Roby. I think he's had a really good spring. I'm excited for the fall to kind of see how he keeps progressing.
So they want to know who they're putting out there. And like I said, right before we went to that audio, he's gone from number 2 to number 4 within this defense now. Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, and Rashad Weaver, supposedly ahead of him in the pecking order when it comes to edge rushers. And clearly this team likes Derek Roberson. He's stuck around now for over 2 years.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how this added depth helps when Bud Dupree, who maybe isn't going to be 100%, we don't know, at training camp at the start of the season, there may have to be some holdover from those other guys that are supposed to be there to be his supporting cast.
Well, when you sign a top edge rusher, you're getting better at about 3 different positions. You're getting better at your second edge rusher, your third edge rusher, and really at interior defensive line as well, because more attention on Bud Dupree makes Danico Autry and makes Jeffrey Simmons more dangerous. Like, I think this makes average to above average Titans better. I think it makes your average guys above average. A Roberson can become a gadget kind of player that has specific schemes and knows what his role is. He's not a one-size-fits-all edge rusher. I think the same could be said about Harold Landry. Harold Landry's snap count has been a major concern. We've been talking about this for years, that Harold Landry's just not efficient. The numbers and the volume, sure, it doesn't look that bad when you look on paper and see the amount of sacks that Harold Landry has had as a Titan.
He's not a number 1 guy.
But when you look at sacks per snap, now we're having a different discussion. If you can make Harold Landry a more efficient pass rusher, you're making Harold Landry a much better pass rusher that looks more like the second-round pick that you spent on him versus being this guy's a little bit of a reach because he's playing, 85 to 90% of your snaps. It's just not manageable for a guy who needs to just be a first and second or a just second and third down guy.
I think the reality of it is this. John Robinson needs a hit on edge.
We're
talking Landry, I think you can say a miss in the second round. Probably deserving of being on this team, but not worth the second-round pick that he was taken with. We can agree on that?
I think it's fair.
Yeah, it's something that could be discussed, but
yeah. So then you've got the Beasley and the Clowney signings from last season. Obviously, everybody in the world wants to forget about that.
Yeah.
I think John Robinson needs a hit here. I think Bud Dupree is a hit here. I think he's that good, but we'll have to see come September, right? Like, there's no way to know for now. And I want to see those sack levels go up, but also, like you just talked about, Will, everybody wants to see sacks. I forget the conversation. It was maybe Buck yesterday talking about, are sacks a superficial stat?
Yeah,
I think
Friday,
he was nailed on and saying they're superficial
until you don't get them.
Until you don't get them.
Well, this was the crutch we used for Clowney, though. Like, this is what I want to because I agree with you in theory of, like, yes, this is a disruptor. That's what people keep saying about Bud Dupree. Like, this guy's a disruptor. He's going to be in the backfield but he doesn't always finish. Isn't that exactly what we were saying about Jadeveon Clowney this time last year? Now, granted, Danico Autry wasn't on this team to help finish those sacks because Clowney was disruptive. Like, I almost think Clowney gets a little bit of a bad rap. Like, I think if the guy is healthy, he rises to the mean and kind of reverts back to the dude was in the backfield a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't have anybody else there with him. Like, now the Titans can argue, okay, well, Danico Autry is going to provide the interior pressure to help those edge rushers. But I don't know. It's exactly what we said about
Let's real quick hear from Bud Dupree before we do hit the break about kind of the pressure that's on him to fix this pass rush. Because we've talked about the supporting cast and what they're going to need from that position if he's not available at the start of training camp. But here is, from minicamp, the guy who the Titans are paying $16.5 million a year, coming off a torn ACL in Week 12, by the way, to fix the pass rush and the kind of perceived pressure that he is facing. This is Bud Dupree.
I mean, to me, man, it comes with, you expect to get paid big your second contract. If you're working hard your first contract, you expect to hit the second contract and get paid. And with that doesn't mean you have to go out there and change who you are, because that's what got you paid. So, I just got to go out there and continue to produce like I have. And, and the bigger part of that is just not me producing, it's bringing someone else along to produce as well. So, and then once you're doing that, then it's all worth it.
That's him, Bud Dupree, bringing someone else along to produce as well. Harold Landry, Davey, is not a miss if he picks up 7 to 8 sacks alongside Bud Dupree, who's in double-digit numbers.
We've got to
this
see
season.
more than we've seen so far, though.
Yeah.
We've got to see more than we've seen through this is now his 4th season, so through the first 3 years he's been in the league. So I think the guy can get there, and when it comes to defense, I defer to Coach Mack on literally everything. He says the guy's
I defer to him on everything.
He says the guy's going to get there.
Just
So
everything.
he'll get there if Coach Mack says he's going to get there.
Yeah, I'll listen to Coach Mack. Let's get Coach Mack in on this soccer discussion, see what he has to say. Davey Shepard of Speedway Soccer is with us. Nashville will be hosting a World Cup qualifier in September. We will discuss on the other side. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling with you right here on 104.5 The Zone.
Need a Titans fix? Bam! Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone, your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
McGregor versus Poirier 3 is all set for UFC 264, and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, has a knockout offer for this weekend's fight. DraftKings is offering 264-1 odds on a knockout in the first round during Saturday's main event. If the rubber match ends in a first round knockout, you walk away with cash. That's right. Bet $1 on McGregor or Poirier to win by first round knockout. You win $264. Put your MMA knowledge to the test and put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code WGFX when you sign up to turn $1 into $264. That's code WGFX only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 years or older and present in Tennessee to bet. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly with HeroLoan.com. The VA loan is truly one of the best benefits of being in the military. You can buy a house with no money down, and you can refinance and cash out up to 100% of your home's appraised value. We are locking loans in the twos and closing VA loans in as little as 14 days. Apply online today at HeroLoan.com.
The Home Loan Expert LLC, NMLS number 1326241.
If you ask people, what's one of the things that's really important to you? Most people would say, saving money. I'm Shooter Stein, president of NCA, National Certified Alarms. At NCA, that's what we've been doing since 1997, saving people money. And we have something else people really like. No long-term contracts like the other guys. NCA's agreements are just month to month. Why pay $30 or more for the same service when you can save 50% or more? There are no fees to convert to NCA if you have an existing security system that's compatible. Our landline monitoring starts at just $9.95 a month, and our wireless monitoring starts at just $19.95 a month. At NCA, we're locally owned and operated. When you call us, you will talk to folks you know, not to people in some distant location. If you need a new system for your home or business, we can install one for a great price. Give us a call. We have great people that are here to help. Call us today at 615-777-7NCA. That's
in the building as Nashville receives big news. Come September, boys, the U.S. men's national team will be hosting a World Cup qualifier. They will play host to Canada, and it will be the first World Cup qualifier of the fall. How much did this catch you off guard, Davey, when you saw this on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I just really wasn't even thinking about the venue starting to be announced for that. So that's probably the biggest thing there. I would have thought Nashville would have been in consideration just due to the fact that we are one of the finalist cities for a World Cup bid. And I think that's the more important thing, right? Like hey, great, we're hosting a World Cup qualifier. Super cool. But knowing you're one of few cities left and they're looking to do these regional pods, the fact that they are giving the very first one against Canada, who is a good opponent, it's awesome, man. I think it's just great for the city. Braden, I know he's going to be on this week, right? He tweeted out yesterday. Yeah. Nashville like having a soccer moment right now, doing really good ratings in the Euros. The Mexico-U.S. final a few weeks ago rates really well. NSC's doing it thing. I think I saw yesterday cumulative attendance for NSC so far is second in the league, only behind Atlanta.
Which is interesting because if you're giving a spot to Nashville, you're not giving one to Atlanta.
Now, they've also hosted more home games.
Yeah, and you also have to factor in COVID regulations in Seattle and in Portland.
Right, but, I mean, soccer is doing well in Nashville right now, and this is just another good sign of that. So, pretty awesome.
The last two games for Nashville SC, the two highest attended games this season, against Montreal last Saturday was 22,000. And then against Philadelphia this past weekend was 21,000.
Yeah.
So trending in the right direction. You talk with people at the club. That's their excitement from the Nashville SC point of view, is that they're trending upwards with every game. It's more and more people that get hooked and then are coming back, which I think that there's evidence that that is the case so far. How does this, guys, affect Nashville's chances of being a World Cup team? I'm still not optimistic, honestly. I just think given the facility has to be the top priority of this. And, it's kind of unfair to the city of Nashville, I think would crush something like this. The facility just doesn't compare to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Like, this to me almost is a signal that, hey, like, we appreciate you, so we're going to throw you a bone of being the first qualifier because we're not going to have you be a World Cup host.
Well, now hang on. If this happened in 2026, an expanded field, by the way, there will be more host cities in Canada and Mexico involved as well during the group stage. But if this happens in 2026, it ain't happening in a Nissan Stadium.
I agree with Lucas. I think this gets Amy or money. I think this gets Amy or money from the city. Getting a World Cup bid gets Nashville to play ball.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. Here's the other thing about Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think they built the nicest stadium in the world, and they have a surface that you can't play the highest quality of soccer on.
That's true.
I don't see a men's World Cup match happening on a turf field.
And where were we last?
Seattle, too.
Yeah.
Where were we last week? I mean, is that not the exact type of Nashville SC's new stadium? That's what they're going to be looking for.
Well,
you don't think they have their eyes on the 2026 World Cup to some degree?
Oh,
I don't know. Man.
That'll be at Nissan. If it's here, it's not enough people. 32,000 or 30,000 is too small for a World Cup match. Surely.
There were some in Brazil, right around that range. Some of the smaller group stage games, like we're not getting Spain, Argentina, and Nashville. Right. You know what I mean? Like we're getting Panama and
Northern Macedonia,
Ivory Coast or something. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I could see it either way. I think, you get the Titans to play ball in this as well. I think you hit the nail on the head there that if you can collaborate with the Titans and not just be, hey, this is Nashville SC and Nashville trying to get the World Cup, you've got to bring in the name brand because the Titans are always going to be the name brand in Nashville. There's no doubt about that. So get the name brand to help you bring in, the biggest event in world sports. I don't know. I just think Nissan would be a better fit. It's closer to the Broadway aspect of it, the hotels, everything with it. Obviously, the development around the Nashville SC Stadium we've talked about. It's going to be like the Battery in Atlanta. There's going to be hotels. There's going to be walking distance bars. And
this is 5 years from now.
Right. I think 5 years from now, you're going to have a semblance of that around Nissan Stadium, too.
That's my gut as well.
Like, even if Nissan Stadium is still, the guts of it are still older and are still, our age, literally. We've grown up with Nissan Stadium. Don't replace us, just replace the stadium. It's not going to look like it does in its current form just because of the stuff around it. I think we could agree on that and assume that at this point.
Mikey Dreamer asks on Twitch. We are live, 104.5 The Zone TV, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Mikey Dreamer, do we know when those tickets go on sale? All we know, Mikey, is that ticket information will be available in the near future. That was what was said at the press release from U.S. Soccer. The match will be September 5th. That is a Sunday on FS1.
Great day to have, too.
7 p.m. Central Time. Yeah, that's going to be right there, that opening weekend of college football. Tennessee playing on a Thursday. And that gap between, and certainly not a coincidence in Nissan Stadium, between the end of Titans preseason and the following Sunday will be that first game against Arizona in week 1. So the timing is there. 615-737-1045. We want to know what you think. Like, if you're anti-soccer, the second the word soccer is mentioned on the radio, I'm out guy. Like, before you turn the dial, give us a call, 615-737-1045. How could you be convinced to see something like this? Why would you not want something like this to come to Nashville? Because the thing is, guys, and the numbers are in this press release, people show up when this happens. 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 people. When these events come to Nashville,
sell out.
They show up.
Like that tangible goal for Nissan Stadium and for Nashville. Sell out Nissan Stadium for this game. Realistic or unrealistic?
I think after you've put 50-some thousand in the stadium for Nashville SC Atlanta, I think it was over 50,000 for Tottenham and Manchester City's teams playing each other. I think after you've had performances like that in a World Cup qualifier on a holiday weekend, you should be expecting to get extremely close to a sellout. Over 50,000, no questions asked.
This is the type of game that brings in the guy that also is I don't want to say Euro snob, but it's just a U.S. soccer guy. Like, until Nashville had a team, I was this guy. I was Premier League, and I loved the U.S. men's national team.
Me too.
Nashville SC is pumped right now. That even though it's not their actual building yet, because their building is still in construction, Nashville SC is thrilled. I mean, they should have marketing everywhere across this game. And guys, we know this as soccer people, but if you are not a soccer person and you're listening to this, the only thing that could be a bigger draw for the U.S. would be if this game was against Mexico. Getting the first qualifier is, you could argue the biggest non-World Cup match you could possibly host outside of a U.S.-Mexico game. Because anytime U.S. plays Mexico, even if it's a friendly, it's the biggest game in America that year, no question.
Nashville has hosted a Gold Cup semifinal. To me, this is far bigger.
Oh, this is huge. And getting the first one, Labor Day weekend, people are going to be coming from all across the country to go to this. This is not going to be just a Nashville residence, and this is not like people are going to tune me out and be pissed at me for saying this. Like, this is not like Nashville community gets a game. This is America comes to Nashville for a game.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier, Ben Wright with the scoop on this yesterday. If you look at the retweets and the comments on that, a lot of people said, oh, yeah, already booking my trip, Nashville Labor Day weekend, can't wait. That whole thing, you're absolutely right. This isn't good for Middle Tennessee soccer. This is good for soccer in the South in general. Going to be a huge turnout for the game for sure. And I'll mention this, too. You talked about tickets. I think the one surefire way that you can get a ticket to these matches if you are an American Outlaw, which is the supporters group for the U.S. men's national team. So, hey, if you're out there on the fence, you want to get as cheap of a ticket as possible, go join AO and get your ticket through them. That'll be the best way to take care of it.
In 2017, the U.S. played Panama here in this building at Nissan Stadium in the Gold Cup, a group stage game. It was a 1-1 draw, and it drew 47,600 fans. 40,000 fans showed up later when U.S. played Mexico, 1-0, and Tyler Adams scored his first career international goal for that win. And then we've already talked about the 60,000 that were there for Nashville SC Atlanta United. Nashville has, as a sports town, has been like a city of auditions, right? It feels like so many things that Nashville has done as a sports community has been an audition for something. Like, does the draft come to Nashville if you don't see what they do in downtown Broadway, packing it out for the Pred Stanley Cup run, or even the uniform reveal? I mean, the amount of people that were packed onto Lower Broadway to look at what the Titans were going to be wearing the next year alone. I mean, that gave the NFL like, okay, hang on a second. Like, we could do this. So I view this as an audition. I don't know if you guys do. And again, we're talking about the 2026 World Cup. This is a qualifier for 2022, which will be in Qatar. 2026 is coming to North America with an expanded field of teams. I view this as an audition.
Absolutely.
I think it is, but I'm worried it's an instead.
That doesn't mean they're going to get the part.
No.
That's just how I look at it.
I still don't think it's going to happen. I mean, just look at who you're competing against. Like, Atlanta will find a way to make the surface work in order to get a World Cup game. Like, I'm still picking Atlanta over Nashville for a World Cup. if I'm
Atlanta's
US soccer
Atlanta's
or
hosting. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think you have
everything you
Atlanta
read-
and Nashville.
No, I think you do.
The
Everything you
international
read.
community in Atlanta, I'd be
They
shocked
want
if
to
they
do
didn't get a
pods.
game.
They want to do regional pods of teams so
Yeah.
that groups go in and play games in like a 4-state area that are pretty close flight.
The U.S. is massive, so yeah, they
it's
got
totally
That's true.
different, right?
But
So-
you've got multiple, like Orlando done, host, I think.
Really? No, I don't think so.
With that new stadium?
I think Atlanta's more of a shoe-in than Orlando.
I mean, Columbus.
How many people does that stadium hold?
40,000 maybe? No, I mean, it's smaller than, I
That's
guess
what
you're
I'm
right,
saying.
because
Yeah,
the
it's
Nashville
not enough
SC went.
people.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
I do think we overlook the size of stadium thing because I think they'd rather have, like we said, a Panama Ivory Coast matchup in a 30,000 person stadium than in a 60,000
Yeah, that's
person
fair.
stadium.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I do think we
love,
overlook because in World Cups in the past, the state it's outside of the U.S. and they have to build stadiums for these things. But like in Brazil, outside of the Maracanã in Rio, where the final was held, these stadiums aren't that massive. So I do think we may overlook that, although we're certainly not lacking in options. But I don't know, guys. I view this as an audition for 2026. That doesn't mean Nashville will get it, but I fully expect, maybe not a sellout crowd for this thing. But, I mean, and again, if it was Mexico, Ben Wright says they're not going with soccer-specific stadiums here. It's going to be NFL stadiums wherever possible.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
agree.
good point. But if it came down to it, okay, so you guys think they would go in Nissan Stadium in terms of a World Cup match? They'd play it in Nissan Stadium over Nashville SC Stadium.
I mean, opponent dependent, yes, but I don't even know that I think it's necessarily opponent dependent. I think they just would.
So here's the
I mean, the World Cup final was in the Rose Bowl in '94. So yeah, Ben is absolutely right.
So most likely 10 American cities will be chosen among these 17 candidates. Atlanta is one of them. Yeah, Baltimore. It's not going to Baltimore.
I mean, Baltimore, D.C., or Philly, one of those three cities is going to get a game.
I agree.
And
Boston
FedEx is terrible, so it might be Baltimore.
Right. Boston, I think, is likely. Boston or Cincinnati up there. Dallas is getting a game without a doubt. AT&T Stadium. Denver, you have the altitude aspect of that. That's interesting. I don't know if that's for or against them, honestly. Houston, Kansas City, the Rose Bowl, that's a definite as well.
Yes.
Miami, I think, is an easy definite as well. Nashville, MetLife Stadium, another definite. Orlando, Philadelphia, Levi Stadium in San Francisco. I think you also write that one in Sharpie.
I would as well.
Seattle, I think that one's probably, I don't know, that their playing surfaces makes it a little interesting. And then DC, I think, is another definite in there. So 7 of those that we just mentioned will not be chosen. I don't know. Cincinnati's got a really good soccer culture.
I think Philly's in. It's 250th anniversary of the, 4th of July will be 250 years since Declaration of Independence. I
yeah.
think Philly's in. I think DC might miss out. FedEx
Really?
is just FedEx is the
Oh, it's a
worst,
dump.
man. It's the dump.
I went there for Arsenal and Real Madrid
Yeah.
last summer.
I'm from DC. I love
2 years
DC. I
ago.
think it's great. They've got to tear RFK down and build a new stadium. Maybe they can do that before 2026. Snyder's been talking about moving to Northern Virginia or buying the RFK property and rebuilding. If a new stadium is in DC, DC's a lock, no questions asked. But
I agree.
FedEx, as it stands, I think misses out.
Mikey Dreamer says, interesting that Phoenix Glendale was not on that list.
Yeah. That's where there was a U.S.-Mexico game played there, like, somewhat recently. No, it wasn't recently. Michael Bradley was still playing, so it wasn't that recent. It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know the game you're talking about. I think it might have been
US gave up,
Berhalter's
like-
first game. I think it might have been 2 years
Was it
ago.
really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I thought Clem's.
Well, the point is,
the most of our audience doesn't care.
we're splitting
We're
we're splitting hairs when we talk about these cities and these stadiums. Well, I think maybe they would have it. They'd probably have it in Seattle. They
So
definitely
but
have it in
why
Atlanta.
would you not come to a city who can show they put on events like Nashville?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
This is an audition.
Agreed
That
completely.
is why I am
Agreed
saying that.
Because
completely.
it's a soccer event. Yeah, I agree it's an audition. I just think it, you gotta deliver. I mean, look, this thing's got to be marketed like crazy. I think Nashville SC and MLS have gone on the record that Tottenham-Manchester City game was an audition.
Yes.
The USA Jamaica Gold Cup semifinal, like that helped.
And I'll tell you this. What's
was
a
2 years
hint
ago.
to me is you saw guys like Gil Beverly, the Titans PR. All of those people are pumping the game as well at Nissan City.
And that's
to
what I'm
me,
saying.
there's
is it,
more to it.
It
There's-
can't just be Nashville SC making this a
Agreed.
soccer event.
Oh,
This has
sure.
to also be a Nashville
Well,
and Tennessee
look at the
event.
press release. U.S. Soccer would like to thank the Tennessee Titans, the City of Nashville, the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corp, shout out Butch Spearden, and Nashville Soccer Club for their support in hosting this important event in Music City. And the quote from Greg Berhalter, We know that one of the things critical to our success in World Cup qualifying is having a strong home crowd and winning our home games. When I think about the stadium, talking about Nissan, the field, and a crowd that's full of energy, there's no better place to kick off our home World Cup qualifying series than in Nashville. It's a vibrant city, and we look forward to playing there.
Playing Canada definitely helps because there was always going to be a southern city when you play Canada.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to go to New York or like Buffalo or like anything like north of the Mason-Dixon line. You're like, nah, that's a little bit more of a pro-Canada crowd. Now, what's also working against the U.S., you're not really going to get a pro-U.S. crowd like you would in Seattle.
Columbus or whatever.
Or in, like, Columbus isn't even, like, even Cincinnati.
Well, it depends on the opponent.
Like, I think Cincinnati gets picked because it is such a big soccer city and is going to be an American stronghold in the World Cup.
It is a nice
You got a lot of melting pots and a lot of Cincinnati is Paul Brown
Cincinnati's,
Stadium.
Paul Brown Stadium. You
that's-
can't go wide enough for a World Cup pitch.
Well, that's in here.
Yeah, no, Paul Brown's out.
That's in that's the proposal they gave.
I'm telling you, Paul Brown is out.
Okay,
They will
well.
not be a finalist. I'm telling you.
You heard it here first, ladies.
And
you're probably right. Like I'm not doubting you.
And you've got the automatic NSC tie-in, right, with Alistair Johnson. Been playing a lot of.
That's pretty awesome for Nashville SC
Canada
too.
lately,
Is that you get your young stud defenseman that at the worst is in the subs.
Ben said that's what I'm saying. So Ben, right? Do you really think there will be a pro-Canada crowd in Nashville? That's what I'm saying.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that absolutely not. I'm saying it would be in more northern cities, which is why
I don't know.
This is in a southern.
You think
city.
there'd be a bigger Canada crowd in
I'm not saying
Buffalo
I'm
than
not
an
saying,
American crowd?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're going to get less Canadians going to this game in Nashville than you would in a northern city. I'm not saying it'd be a pro-Canada crowd.
I agree with you.
Anyway.
Yeah. I don't know how many Canadians watch soccer, period.
V-Love on Twitter says, Music City Grand Prix also going to be an audition to get F1 in Nashville.
Don't get me started,
Could
V-Love.
you imagine?
I'm going to have to leave this studio. Be
I
too
might
hot and
sell
bothered.
tickets like on my my balcony downtown. Humble brag by me. On my balcony here downtown. I'm just going to invite people to my apartment. Hey, just come watch the race. It'd be good.
We'll be right back. We're going to talk a little more Nashville Soccer Club, actually talking about the team that is here in town and a huge win on Saturday. Davey Shepard is here. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling with you on 104.5 The Zone.
No one knows Titans football more than Buck Rising. The Buck Rising Show. Tomorrow morning starting at 10 on 104.5 The Zone.
One of the crazy things about sports is just how teams come together, how they
team in the Eastern Conference. I think that they are.
They have
that's a big if.
Well, they
3-2-2 draws where the XG was more like 3.5 in those 3 games.
Right.
So, I mean, even just those 3 wins apiece, you're tied on points with New England.
I mean, that's like saying, though, like with a elite quarterback, the Washington football team is the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, but if the
like
Washington
that's the
football
hardest
NFC
thing to
East,
get.
at
if
least.
the Washington football team was about to sign a guy from a league in Mexico that could compete, maybe they're there. Maybe it's a different. I'm
Wouldn't that be
saying we've got Ake
something? No, I
Loba on
know.
the menu here.
I know, but
On the menu.
do we
here.
know though that Ake Loba, the rumored, I mean, it's happening. The next Nashville SC player is elite, is a big time finisher.
No, we
even
don't.
know that you need elite. You just need a finisher.
Well, we don't know that he's that either.
I think you need
Highest
elite.
XG
We think he is.
Highest XG differential in the league, Nashville. It's just like the team is getting into dangerous chances. This was we just said one of the best, if not the best, the second best win of the season. And I can count on almost 2 hands the amount of other goals that could have been scored.
Well, the issue though is not performances like this against good teams, because we had this exact conversation on our show last week that until you do what Nashville SC did on Saturday consistently and finish a big chance early in the game, don't get behind early, finish off a solid defensive performance and a clean sheet at home. Do that week in and week out, and I'll be a believer. But this team is middle of the table.
And what I'm saying is the only thing that is stopping them doing it week in and week out is finishing.
And the thing is,
thing.
this team is not middle of the table without that finish. This team's number fourth place team in the Eastern Conference.
All of the other stats say they're not middle of the table. The only thing that is keeping them there is finishing.
No, the points say they're not. They're the fourth place team in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
I don't think it's the only thing stopping them, though, now, because now you have 3 of your best players leaving for a month. Now you have Anibal Godoy, who's your most important midfield player.
So doesn't a better finisher become even more
well,
important?
yeah, it's even more important, but then it's not the only thing working against you. That's the point.
Yeah, but that's the same thing for every other team in the league. In MLS, if you are a competitive team, you're losing players.
Yeah, but no one is
if you're not
losing
losing
their
players,
most
you're not a
important
good
midfielder.
team.
Is anyone losing a Godoy equivalent to what he's done this year?
Surely someone is, right?
I mean, like I don't know. Like,
I mean,
We'd have to do some deeper digging on that. But yes, good players go.
Paul Arriola leaving for the U.S. He's been pretty good for D.C.
Good players leave on international
over
breaks.
the weekend against
Touchdown.
MLS teams have to get used to playing without their best players. The best teams usually have the best players. The best players
No,
are
I
probably
agree.
representing their national team.
I just don't think you can say now like not having a good striker is the only thing working against them when starting literally Thursday when they play Atlanta, they've got more things working against them. The good news for Thursday, guys, and we'll get into this tomorrow, Atlanta United has no one. No one left on their team because of international duty
I don't
and
love to throw around
injuries.
the must-win terminology, but I think against that Atlanta side, that game is a must-win.
Look, isn't it crazy how quickly from like February 29th, 2020 to July 5th, 2021, Atlanta has all the pressure to beat Nashville SC, coming in as the defending champions. They weren't the defend. No, they were. Yeah,
they were.
Defending champions at that point, playing a new expansion team. Now Nashville SC has all the pressure to beat Atlanta. Like, it was just funny listening to, like, the people here who don't know soccer. Like, people, I remember Brent being like, oh, yeah, just be ready for Nashville SC to be really bad. I remember the way the Preds were when they were an expansion team. Like, dude, apples and oranges. This team has now quickly become a power.
As Ben peppers us with teams losing their most important midfielder to international duty, Gianluca
Okay, but-
Busio and KC, legit
Busio's
in
a big
LA.
one. Busio's a big one.
But that's all beside the point.
The value of Godoy to Nashville, I would argue, is as big, if not bigger.
Well,
than
he doesn't.
any
He
of them.
doesn't start yesterday, and they put out one of their better performances
we talked
of the
about
year.
that midweek. I said, hey, I think Anunga's going to give Dax a chance of getting back to being himself, right? Anunga is just a true holding midfielder. He's playing that 6 well. Dax looked good the other day. I think his best game of the season. Shout out to Hani Mukhtar as well. I think he was extremely creative, looked really, really dangerous in spaces. Again, kind of gets in one-on-one with a goalie and doesn't convert. I would say this is the toughest of those kind of options we've seen over the last few weeks. But I thought Hani I think Hani is close, man. He scores 2 goals against Atlanta a few
Playing
weeks
better.
ago. But he's definitely getting better. And I can't say it enough. The timing of Randall Leal's kid being born is just so huge for this team that you don't lose him to the Gold Cup as well.
We'll dive into it more tomorrow night, obviously. But formationally, going to the back 3 for the first time all season,
Big fan.
The timing of it and the performance that this team put out, you have to give Gary Smith so much credit. I really
We
like.
called it.
Oh, the back three?
Yeah.
I
Listen
think
to the
it just
Nashville
suits the
Soccer Show.
personnel.
You'll learn something.
It
I mean,
suits the personnel. It does.
This was not just because he scored, but I think CJ Sapong's best game as a Nashville SC player. That first goal, obviously, in the second minute, Sapong scores and Nashville holds on for the 1-0 win. Just coming back to pick up the ball in midfield, kind of muscle off a defender, get it wide to Leal, and then just a direct, incisive run, and then the through ball from Leal just tucked inside that last defender. But Sapong was active all game. He was a constant threat.
Good,
for the first time this season, I think he was a constant threat for the amount of time, the entirety of time he was on the field.
Good to see Cadiz get back out there, get a few minutes as well. It's going to be important for him to play well over the next few weeks, especially while people are gone. And I think we might see a little, I think you could call that a 3-4-3 the other day that we saw. I think we'll see some 3-5-2 as well with Cadiz and Sapong both in the lineup. So it'll be interesting to see soon just kind of what Gary decides to do formationally with those pieces. And look, you're right, Will. It's going to be a long month. There's no way around that. It's going to be a long month. I feel a lot better after that performance against Philadelphia, who, to be clear, is a very good MLS side.
Very, very good.
Eight
games unbeaten going into that matchup.
You can beat anyone if you can beat them like that at home, which is a good sign for this team. The sky is the limit if you can put a performance like that on the field in front of your home fans against that team.
And you can watch biblical figures shred before kickoff.
Three teams ahead of Nashville in the table in the Eastern Conference. New England, Orlando, and Philadelphia. Nashville has beat 2 of those 3 teams. So you got to like where you're sitting right now.
Again, plenty more on this tomorrow night, 9 p.m., the Nashville Soccer Show. Between the 3 of us, we will get into this and much more. Euro Talk, all of that. We will spare you, though, for now on those discussions. Hope you'll join us tomorrow night.
Home.
On the Zone. It's not. And all the other
Coming
Zone
home.
streaming platforms.
Football's coming home.
Got me losing my train of thought over here.
I'm sorry.
So Thursday against Atlanta United, a 7:30 kickoff at Nissan Stadium. And then Saturday against Chicago Fire, who just defeated Atlanta United 3-0, a Chicago Fire team that has been awful this season. We'll come to Nissan Stadium and stay posted. All week, the Buck Rising Show will be at that game, and we want you with us in club VIP seats for that matchup.
Quick correction, that's the following Saturday. You've got Thursday the 8th and then the 17th.
Yes, the 17th. The 17th, the following Saturday. So the 17th, hosting Chicago Fire. So stay posted all next week. We'll be giving away tickets to that game to watch it with Buck and I. Really looking forward to that. All right, we're going to hit a break. 3 down, 1 hour to go. Let's talk some Vols. On the other side, Grant Ramey of 247 Sports will join us. There's been some transfer portal news for Tennessee football. Also, a lot of how this name, image, and likeness stuff, as we circle back to that, really impacts the Vols and what they're doing to educate recruits, players on the topic. Obviously, plenty of Tennessee players already having deals getting underway. We'll be right back. Lucas Panzica, Will Bowling with you. Davey Shepard has spent the hour with us. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Inside and outside the locker room, we cover the Titans 24/7. Got it! Your
as Grant Ramey is set to join us in about 15 minutes to talk Tennessee when it comes to the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness. A lot to get into here, and we want you to be a part of it. 615-737-1045. Hit us in the chat on 1045 The Zone TV, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Will, there's been a lot of action in the transfer portal for Tennessee as of late. Again, I feel like it's sort of flown by the radar a little bit. Like I said the other day, not to show myself here, but I probably shouldn't say this. This is as little as I have paid attention to a Tennessee football offseason, just in terms of hooked on every single movement and thing that happens. We do our due diligence. We have the UT podcast every Wednesday, and we know what's happening. But just as far as the overall storylines, there's just been so much going on this summer. But quietly, there have been comings and goings in terms of the transfer portal at Tennessee.
There have. Look, usually I'm counting down the days at this point for college football. Tennessee would always do that jersey countdown in the past where it was like, Quentin Hancock days until football time in Tennessee.
Was that 87? I can't believe we knew that. That's sad.
Which Quentin Hancock, known for the 5th overtime touchdown catch from Eric Ainge against Kentucky to send Tennessee to its last SEC championship game. Good game. I'm still thawing out from going to that game to extend the streak at the time.
You were at that 4 overtime game.
The 5 one in Lexington, yeah.
That was 4 overtimes. Yeah, 4.
I remember
Eric Berry blocked the field goal and the tackling Andre Woodson on the 2-point conversion.
Dan Williams
blocked it. That's right. Eric Berry picked it up and got his helmet yanked off his head.
Oh, gosh. We were talking about that the other day because I remember that was back when you still had, like, disposable, like, cameras with flashes and stuff.
Yeah, when it was a nice aesthetic, right? Like at the Super Bowl,
yes.
see all the flashing.
See all the flashes.
Yeah, it's gone
and so there were all these flashes right as that ball was kicked. And a lot of Kentucky fans have a perfect picture of Dan Williams just putting his hand up and blocking the field goal. And it was actually the next play Tennessee went down and scored. It was the first play of the 4th overtime. And then, of course, Gerard Mayo and I believe Turk McBride combined for the tackle. I think it was Andre Woodson. Yeah,
it was Andre Woodson.
It was Andre Woodson to tackle him. It was 52-50, I want to say.
Nice walk down memory lane.
I remember everything about that game.
Me too.
Where were we going with this again?
Transfer portal. So obviously Brandon Turnage,
right.
And we'll talk to Grant Ramey about
Hancock,
this.
That's right.
But no, really the thing that sticks out to me most is 2 defensive linemen gone to the transfer portal, and Daryl Middleton and Greg Emerson. Especially Middleton, a guy that at least I'm not in that locker room, so I don't know what the dynamics are right now. But I expected that guy to be a key veteran piece for this defensive line that before those moves. Before those guys hit the portal, had a lot of bodies, maybe not a lot of proven talent. You think about Aubrey Solomon, still waiting for him to blossom a little bit, the potential of an Elijah Simmons. A lot of bodies there, but not a lot of depth, and probably some development that was stunted by the debacle of that coaching position last year with Jimmy Brumbaugh's midseason firing.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the bigger positions of question for Tennessee this year. Caleb Tremblay, of course, comes from USC. We've known that for quite some time, but
DeJoun Terry out of Kansas as well.
Now that you start to, you bring in Brandon Turnage, the defensive back from Alabama, former 4-star athlete out of Oxford, 6'1", long, lanky corner that's going to probably step right in and be Tennessee's number 1 corner this year. I mean, it's him, Alontae Taylor.
At least opposite Alontae Taylor.
Right. And then from there, you've got some other guys you've added, Kamal Haddon as well, who comes over from Auburn. Really, he's coming from Independence Community College because he never actually played for Auburn. But the lack of depth for Tennessee defensively on a team that is going to have its defense on the field a lot if the offense does not at least move the chains a little bit with how up-tempo they're going to play. The lack of depth is a major, major question mark for Tennessee. It's not even a question mark because we know it. We know it's bad. Well, I'm talking myself back down. Like something isn't a question mark when we just know that it's not going to be good. That's just like an exclamation point, but a negative one. It's a big concern. It's as little excitement as I've ever remembered going into a Tennessee football season because people are just tired. They're tired of getting themselves up for another year 1 rebuilding, year 0 clean slate. We don't want a clean slate.
So this came from a friend of mine. SEC Mike is how a lot of you know him. Michael Bratton of Saturday Down South does a great job as the news desk editor. I worked under Mike for a couple of years out of school at Saturday Down South. And Mike had a podcast. He hosts that SEC podcast. He had Adam McClintock on at CFB_professor on Twitter, an analytics guy, largely with college football. And here's what Mike tweeted the other day. Tennessee may be the SEC's most underrated team. The Vols are among the 7 SEC teams that currently have a combination of roster and coaching staff that are playoff caliber per at CFB Professor's model. Quote, talent has never really been an issue at Tennessee. Now, before you dive in with your expletives as you're driving about Tennessee football's lack of talent, let's hear from the college football professor Adam McClintock and his take on Tennessee having, quote, playoff caliber talent, along with Mike Bratton.
Well, talent has never really been an issue at Tennessee, right? I mean, they've recruited well the past 4 or 5 years in a row. Pruitt did a good job of getting talent in there. It just it never quite came together for him on the field. Josh Heupel, he inherited a good situation at Central Florida. He was taking over for an undefeated Scott Frost team there, and it's tough to tell whether he rode a little bit on those coattails or did he develop that into his own situation. The model is kind of split. It's got him as an A- head coach in those 3 years of experience. Typically, I don't like to call a grade solid until after the 4th year. So he's still kind of in that wishy-washy mode as far as his grading is. But there's no denying he's a good offensive play caller. I do believe he will be calling the plays himself in Knoxville. He's got 10 years of experience of that in that database, and he's a B+ graded offensive coordinator. Tim Banks is his defensive coordinator that he's chosen. Not quite as high on him. He's a C- type guy. So I was a little shocked to see that the model thought so highly of his coaching staff, but I think a lot of that is that as a head coach, his grade isn't quite solid yet, and it's riding a lot on the offensive side of the ball, which anybody who knows a regime change or has experienced that with their team knows that there's going to be some roster turnover, and maybe the body types don't fit quite what Josh Heupel wants to do. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt and Jim Chaney, when he was there running the offense, they recruited big offensive linemen. They wanted to maul people. That's kind of the opposite of what Josh Heupel is going to want to do. He's going to want to get up pace and snap the ball quickly. So we'll just have to see how that turns out in the field this year. It's going to be a heck of a transition as far as strength conditioning is concerned, and we'll see if that gets done in Knoxville.
So that's Adam McClintock at CFB_professor on Twitter. His analytics tell him the talent's not the issue. His analytics tell him Tennessee is a playoff caliber team just looking at the talent. But Will, how much of that takes into account just what Jordan Allen's high school rating was at 247 Sports as he announces his transfer to Weber State? Like, I feel like this has been kind of an overblown narrative. Like, talent's not the issue at Tennessee. It kind of is in a few ways.
Talent has to mean what you've put on the field in college. Like, you can say a guy's talented coming out of high school when all you have to go off of is what they did in high school. It's almost like when someone plays in college and isn't good, they're not a talented college player. I mean, like, you can make the argument that some of these guys were talented high school players. Sure, that's fine. That's a different statement. Saying that, I don't know. I mean, saying that some of these guys were talented high school players is different than saying they were talented college players. Like, a lot of these guys that are transferring out, I mean, Daryl Middleton was talented. Did he live up to his potential as one of the top JUCO players in the country coming out of East Mississippi? Probably not. I mean, and all that talent is gone. I mean, Eric Gray is gone. Like, Henry To'oTo'o is gone. He was your most talented player. All the good members of this incoming recruiting class are gone. J.J. Peterson, he was talented. Are we going to say he's talented now? Absolutely not. He didn't do anything for Tennessee in an orange uniform. He just did in high school. At some point, what you've done in college has to be valued more than how talented you were in high school. Doesn't matter anymore. I don't get it. That's where analytics to me are the cherry on top. They are a secondary source, not a primary source.
Whatever analytics are telling you Tennessee is a playoff caliber team, you got to crumple up and throw into the garbage. How can you say
that someone is playoff caliber and then say they have a C- defensive coordinator in the same statement? How do those two things reconcile?
Well, again, it's based on, and we play this game all the time, like, oh my God, look at Tennessee's average recruiting rankings matched up with, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like in Ohio State, like it's not, the deficiencies are not there all that much. It's always about development. And at times it has been. In the Butch Jones era, that was a big issue. You know, a lot of those teams were, you could argue, talented enough to go to a college football playoff. But look, this Tennessee team right here, like, yeah, talent and depth is an issue. Just because you have top end talent, then all right, say you've got that top tier talent in a few spots, starting roles, because there are some guys that were very highly recruited that are still on Tennessee's roster, but still it's that depth. Like you talk about depth at Alabama, how many of these 4 or 5-star talents at Alabama don't work out at Alabama? Brandon Turnage hardly played at Alabama.
Yeah, he's a top 150 player.
Maybe 4 career games in his couple years at Alabama. Didn't play. Hardly would get a meaningful snap in.
He's Tennessee's number 1 corner now. Literally.
So just be careful when you're looking at, well, this team has talent because of these recruiting rankings. Well, we were looking at in our pre-show meeting, looking at players that are on their way out for Tennessee. Malachi Wideman, Greg Emerson, Daryl Middleton, Martavius French. I mean, all these guys are former 4-star prospects.
Caden Salter.
That's one of the latest ones. I mean, talent, talent, that word gets used a lot when it comes to Tennessee football, and Tennessee football has always had talent, but I do think that aspect of it has been overblown. Josh Heupel has a lot of work to do when it comes to talent.
I'm with you.
Grant Ramey will join us coming up next. We will lead off with Grant of 247 Sports at the next segment. Talk about this Tennessee transfer portal, some of the names that have entered it recently, and name, image, and likeness as it applies to the University of Tennessee. What are they doing to make sure student athletes, incoming freshmen, are educated on what they can do with NIL? We'll be right back. Lucas Panzico, Will Bowling with you. Grant Ramey up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Get Jason Martin and Ramon Foster on J Mart and Ramon tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 on 104.5 The Zone.
Well, if you're trying to buy a home in this market right now, you know how tough it is. You got to have a great team. You got to have a smart real estate agent on
gotten underway. Plenty of players, whether it's hometown businesses, social media, players' own companies endorsing fellow teammates. A bit of a Wild West feel almost to this name, image, and likeness stuff when it comes to Tennessee football. Grant Ramey of 247 Sports with us on The Zone. Grant, how you doing, man? Appreciate you doing this on the long weekend.
I'm doing great. Am I getting paid for this since y'all use my name? And I've been told I've got the image that fits the radio quite well.
I think Will is Venmoing you at some point.
Good. Perfect.
Okay. That works. That works.
At some point. What would you endorse, Grant?
I would endorse Pal Sudden Service.
I knew that
would be
was
in
coming.
line. I would be beating down the door right beside John Fulkerson saying, "Put me on the sign." I fully endorse your products because not because of the money, just because I eat it anytime I can eat it. And you can put my face on it.
How have we not seen that yet? I'm sure it's coming, but I'm shocked that was not literally the first endorsement deal we saw with the Tennessee athlete.
Pals is a very different business where they do things their own way. They don't kind of really dive into things head first. They kind of have a little bit more calculated. But they used to never advertise, period. I think the way they do advertise now, some of the commercials they do is a more recent thing where they've kind of stepped shallowly into it a little bit. But, yeah, it makes perfect sense. There's no better combination than John Fulkerson and Pal Sudden Service.
Yeah, Grant, I was about to say, if I'm paying you for your name, image, or likeness, it's just going to be in sauce burgers the next time I'm in Northeast Tennessee. Don't worry about that.
That's fine. That's fine.
Acceptable terms.
Right. So, Grant, how much of the Wild Wild West has kind of already started with name, image, and likeness? Because for me, the part of this that's going to have the biggest impact is the part no one's ever going to see, right? People endorsing their, local companies, car shops. We've seen that with Tennessee and just, autograph signings, that's all good. But I feel like to me, the part of this that's going to actually end up changing college athletics and making the biggest difference is kind of in the underworld of recruiting. Is that a fair assessment to make at this point?
Yeah, everything in college athletics and recruiting, at least in the Power Five, the major sports, it's always going to be an arms race, whether that's facilities, whether that's stadiums, what player lounges, locker rooms, whatever it is, it's always going to be an arms race. And I think it's going to be an arms race just the same way with name, image, and likeness. And you saw in the build-up to this how each university would put out some kind of video promoting how they were going to handle this subject and how they were going to have, people dedicated to this in their athletic department to educate the players, to let them know the best ways to handle this. I think it is going to be the Wild Wild West to a certain degree, but I think there's also going to be a lot of schools, I'm sure Tennessee included, where you're preaching to your players, kind of step slowly into this, know who you're getting involved with, know who you're putting your name on, who's using your image to sell themselves. Don't get involved with the wrong people. Kind of be cautious. Obviously, these kids want to make their money, and who can blame them? They're college kids. They have a name, they have an image that carries weight because of the place they've got themselves to in athletics. It's only fair that they can use that name and image and likeness to make money. Even if it's as simple as Cameo, which is what a lot of athletes kind of did to start with, where you're just getting money for just sending out video messages, to people saying happy birthday or whatever the shout out is. If it's just as simple as that to make some pocket money, that's fine. But I think you've got to be cautious with it as much as it could be the Wild Wild West because you want to be involved with the right people.
Grant Ramey of Go Vols 247 with us here on 104.5 The Zone. Grant, for me, basketball may have the biggest impact on this because you think about one and dones. You think about a guy like Jordan Bone a couple of years ago who goes pro, ends up just barely getting drafted in the second round, was kind of a fringe draft pick, could have come back kind of player. Now with the added impact of possibly getting paid to continue to get your degree and continue to play at the University of Tennessee, how does this specifically impact Tennessee basketball and Rick Barnes' program, with a guy maybe like a Jaden Springer in the past who, isn't going to go as high as a Keon Johnson will this year? How will this impact one and dones maybe being two and done instead of leaving after their freshman year?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not really a point that I had considered a ton before you mentioned it. But yeah, it makes sense if you're not in a rush to go out and get that first paycheck that you can find as a basketball player, whether that's, taking a chance and trying to be a second round pick and keeping your name in the draft, or even going to Europe if you're not a drafted player, can't make it in the G League, whatever, you go to Europe because you can make a really good living over there playing basketball overseas. It would make sense if you can find the right people to partner with, if you can make the right amount of money. Maybe it does give you a kind of a second thought of maybe should I stick around here and keep doing what I'm doing in this community. And with basketball, with football, you have 105 players on roster. You can get a little bit more lost. Obviously, that's the sport that's the biggest around here, and it always will be. But basketball, you got 13 scholarship players. You have 6 or 7 really, star guys on that team. You go back to the Bones, the Grant Williams, the Admiral Schofield. If this was around when they were in school, that's the guys I feel bad for because they were so close to it, yet so far away from it. I mean, the runs they went on, they would have made so much money in this community, the Knoxville community, selling their name, image, and likeness. So those are the guys I feel bad for, but you're right. It could be a little bit more incentive to stay in school if it comes to that.
Yeah, and I think about the evolution of Tennessee, like as technology evolves, right? The evolution of Tennessee's communication and video teams and how much better they got over the years, standing out as one of the best in the country in the SEC. And the stuff that they did with those teams. Well, remember that one video they put together of Grant Williams playing the piano in the middle of a basketball court, and then the Tennessee band came in, and just so well done, and things like that just raised the profile of these athletes. I mean, Grant Williams would have made an absolute killing at Tennessee. But I digress. Grant Ramey with us, 247 Sports. Grant, when you look at how players are being educated, like we know from the outside everything Tennessee is doing as far as partnering with Altius in conjunction with the Haslam College of Business and everything they're doing on official visits with recruits, telling them about name, image, and likeness and what's your brand, what do you want to represent. But as far as the players that are currently on that roster, how good of a job is Tennessee doing that you know of in educating these guys and their parents? Because as we get into this, were they prepared or was it just suddenly kind of caught without your pants down, players scrambling a little bit, just leaving their DMs open and working with businesses and corporations? Like, how ahead of this was Tennessee? Were they on track, or maybe are they a little bit behind in terms of educating players currently on their roster?
I think they're probably a little bit ahead, or at the very least on track. This is something that they didn't just throw it together, right before July 1st, right when this went live. This is something that they've been working on for a while now, a couple of months at least. I would assume it goes back farther than that. But I think it's just like recruiting. You want to send your kid to a school where that coaching staff is going to take care of your kid. I think with this name, image, and likeness, you're going to be selling recruits. You're going to be selling these players, their families, their parents, that you're going to come here and you're going to take care of their brand just like you're going to take care of that player on and off the court. You're going to give them, VFL Films is going to take care of them. They're going to have their logos. They're going to figure out their brand strategy and how they want to go forward. I think you did see a lot of players posting around the end of June when this was coming up. It was about to turn live on July 1st. My DMs are open, whatever. I think that's just them kind of, putting the bait out in the water and seeing who's going to contact them and kind of where they can go from there. But Tennessee football, Tennessee basketball, I assume other athletics on campus programs for athletes that were there on campus, they were talking to these people behind the scenes and figuring out, getting all the info that they felt they needed to get ahead of time so they handled this the right way.
Who do you think is the most marketable player on Tennessee's football team right now?
Marketable player in Tennessee football. I mean, it's got to be a quarterback. It's got to be a Harrison Bailey. It's got to be even a Brian Maurer. I mean, it's got to be one of those guys because, Tennessee football is obviously the biggest thing probably in the state, and the quarterback position is always going to be the biggest thing. Even if it, we're entering a fall camp where you don't really know who's going to be the quarterback, but I still think I would lean towards a quarterback.
Grant Ramey of Go Vols 247 with us here. Lucas and Will here on 104.5 The Zone. Grant, in the transfer portal, Brandon Turnage, the newest addition for Tennessee in the secondary. Really big need. It's crazy to think that a guy can go from being basically a redshirt candidate at Alabama to maybe being Tennessee's #1 corner overnight, which may have exactly been what Brandon Turnage just did. Coming from Alabama to Georgia for a cup of coffee and then to the University of Tennessee. Where does he rank in Tennessee's most important additions in the transfer portal so far this year?
He's way up the list because you said it, position of need. And there's so many of those on this Tennessee football roster. Every time you start over with a new head coach, a new coaching staff, that roster attrition, it hits you a little bit harder. And with the amount of times it's happened at Tennessee over the last few years, over the last decade, every time you do that, you dig that hole a little bit deeper. and you're always going to have guys. I mean, linebacker was a huge position. Defensive back was not far behind linebacker in terms of you needed bodies, you needed experience, and if you can get a guy that was good enough to go to Alabama and, like you said, be a redshirt candidate, have Georgia interested, if you can get him on campus at Tennessee and you can get him in class and you can seal the deal, that's huge. I mean, you have to fill those positions some way, somehow. The Josh Heupel era, obviously, it's just now getting started, and it's going to take some time to build up some momentum, but that's a good place to start.
Grant, what's the excitement level like for Tennessee football in Knoxville? I just feel like at this point of the summer, usually more people are itching for that first game and trying to build some kind of hype. And yes, Tennessee baseball going longer, not having as much of an offseason without any Tennessee sports. I mean, Tennessee baseball, I think, played a part in this, that we're not talking about Tennessee football as much. And, you know, Brandon Huntley Hatfield, BJ Edwards, the way Tennessee basketball is recruited has helped kind of shift the conversation as well. But Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can never remember an offseason where we've talked this little about Tennessee football as this one.
It's there's a scene in Dumb and Dumber where they're driving across the country overnight. I can't remember who's driving, Harry or Lloyd, but they cross the state line and they say, whoever's driving says, "I got to pull over. I don't have the energy to start a new state." It feels kind of like that. Like you've sold the Tennessee fan base on one coaching staff after another and tried to say this is the staff that's going to turn this program around, and this was the right hire this time. And at this point, it feels like they're saying, I'm going to believe it when I see it. And it's really just hard to kind of sell anybody on Tennessee football and what they're building until they see a little bit of it. Bud Elliott, one of our national guys at 247, when Heupel was hired, the point he made and the point that's been in my head since he made it, he was talking about the Pruitt era. He said, you can't be bad and you can't be boring at the same time. If you're going to be bad, you've got to be exciting. And I think with Josh Heupel, if his offense can produce the way it's produced in the past, if he can put up a ton of points, if he has a really productive quarterback, whoever that is, then maybe you start selling the fan base on this is an exciting brand of football. They're going to have a fun offense to watch. They're going to put up a lot of points. It might be a struggle for a while, but at least it'll be somewhat fun to watch. It'll be more enjoyable than what we saw in 2020. So I think they're at a stage where they just have to believe it to see it, and it's going to be a minute.
But on that note, I think back to 2012, Grant, under Derek Dooley and Jim Chaney running the offense, Cordero Patterson on that team, where Tennessee is breaking records on offense and breaking records on the flip side defensively, but not in the way you want to break records. Losing games like 50-47, getting into shootouts with Troy. That wasn't boring. Was not boring, but it was bad. And I don't look back on that fondly. I don't think most Tennessee fans look back at that fondly. So is that kind of a dangerous thing to fall into? Because if Josh Heupel is putting up points but getting 5-7, 6-6 results every year, that'll get old pretty quick, no matter how fun it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's a way of life that they'll sign up for continually year after year, but I think it could pacify some fans in terms of how unwatchable at times it was in 2020 versus what it could be in 2021. And I think they understand at this point, as many coaching changes, as much turnover as there have been at UT over the last 10 years, 15 years, however long it's been, it's going to take a while. You're going to have to just kind of wait it out and see what happens. They're going to have to recruit, fill out their roster like we talked about, those positions of need and how many spots they need them. It's going to take a minute, but if they're going to be bad in 2021 or if they're not going to meet their standards, maybe at least score some points.
So 2 new additions to the transfer portal, Grant, Daryl Middleton and Greg Emerson, 2 defensive linemen. And Middleton is a guy that sort of caught me off guard as a guy that I expected to be a fixture in this defensive line rotation this season. Some experience, one of the biggest players on the roster, maybe some leadership there. Obviously you added the 2, the Tremblay from USC and Terry from Kansas. But what can you say about the state of this defensive line under position coach Rodney Garner after the transfer portal decisions of Middleton and Emerson?
Rodney's a demanding, tough position coach. I think that's why you hire him. That's why you bring him on this staff, because you want somebody that's going to demand excellence out of that position group. And I don't think it's anything overly concerning that these guys are leaving. These guys are headed to the portal, because when you have those coaching changes, guys either bounce immediately or they stick around. They go through a spring. They see what life is like. They kind of see where they fit and kind of what they think they're going to, what their trajectory is under this new group. And if it doesn't work out, if the fit's not there for both parties, then it's better to move on. And nowadays it's easier to transfer than ever, so it's better to move on, find somewhere where you can fit better. And like Tennessee has, they can bring in their own guys. They can do their own work in the transfer portal. So the defensive line is another, one of the many positions of need that we've been talking about. But I don't think it's too surprising to see transfers in, transfers out, just because of the situation with the new coaching staff.
Grant, last thing for me, of course, the big news from Tennessee on the basketball side last week, B.J. Edwards makes it official, committing to Tennessee. There's kind of a sweet spot, right, when you're recruiting basketball players of getting the best possible non-one-and-done players. Is B.J. Edwards a one-and-done candidate when he gets on campus, or is this a guy that could give Tennessee a couple more years and be closer to a Josiah Jordan-James versus a Kennedy Chandler or a Keon Johnson?
Yeah, I think he could be a multi-year player, and you're exactly right. That's a fine line to walk where you want that five-star elite talent, but you also want a very, very, very good basketball player in B.J. Edwards who could be at your program a couple, 3 years. It's kind of like a Josiah Jordan-James.
Mm-hmm.
He could be here, 2 or 3 years and really help you kind of build those, because those are the guys that really help you advance in March, those guys that have been around, that have some experience in the college game, that know what they're dealing with. And B.J. Edwards, he's that kind of guy. I mean, he's a 4-star point guard. He's one of the best players in the state. He's right there in your backyard from Knoxville. He can be a face of your program as soon as he gets here and takes over at that position. So, and he's got a lot of talented friends in that recruiting class as well. So, if he can help them recruit more talent, he would be a great foundation piece, and maybe a piece that's here for a couple or 3 years.
And Edwards, a guy who just put up 22 points in an appearance for Bobby Mays' AAU team, B. Mays Elite. Grant, how much of an asset is a guy like Bobby Mays to Rick Barnes?
Well, that program has helped them quite a bit. There's been a pretty good partnership there. I mean, you look at, it starts with Jaden Springer, a guy that was a 5-star, top 20 player that really Tennessee hadn't had a ton of recent experience recruiting and signing those kind of guys, and they followed that with a Brandon Huntley Hatfield, who's just the same kind of level of elite. I mean, he's a kid that steps on campus as a freshman at 6'10", 235, 240, and they needed exactly that kind of guy. And then it just kind of keeps going down the line here. B.J. Edwards is kind of the next in line, and it's a really, the way Tennessee basketball recruiting has been growing. B. Mays Elite, that AAU program, has been growing at the same pace. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
He is Grant Ramey. Go Vols 247. Grant, appreciate the time, man. Go enjoy the rest of your long weekend.
All right, thanks. Hey, we'll all be checking my Venmo, so just
perfect.
send it anytime.
Yes.
Okay.
Sauce
right.
burger and Frenchie fry on me. Thank you, Grant.
See you.
What is that? What is a sauce burger?
What is a sauce burger?
No, I'm sorry. No. I'm saying price-wise.
Oh, I was about to say.
Yeah, no, I worded that poorly. I know what it is.
It's like $4. Like, that's the thing about Pal's, is it's so cheap too. It's like $3.50 maybe. Tease. This is hey, this is radio biz here. After the break, coming up, I will tell you how much I'm about to Venmo Grant Ramey for a sauce burger and a strawberry shake. Next.
On 104.5, The Zone.
One guy has over 10 years of real NFL experience. The other guy just likes to talk sports.
Jemai Masak. I mean, then you factor in the guys that are already there, whether it's John Fulkerson or Josiah Jordan-James or Santiago Vescovi or Justin Powell, the transfer from Auburn. And speaking of that, John Bryce was on Blaine and Mickey just, I think, on Friday, reporting that Rick Barnes is set to get an extension at Tennessee, another 5 years, over $6 million per year, and he may not be the only one here in the near future.
It makes sense. Look, when you're one of the older coaches in your sport, you've got to have that next extension a little bit more quickly than the younger guys.
I get that, but like who's gunning for Rick Barnes at this point?
No one. Retirement is. That's the thing, is that you're signing that as a statement of faith of, yeah, I'm not going to retire in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Which we know isn't, this is not talking about Rick Barnes specifically. That doesn't really impact a coach wanting to retire or not. It just means they can recruit to the fact that, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to retire soon. I just signed this new deal.
And we expect Tony Vitello to be on that same page soon, though Tennessee has not announced either.
They have not announced it. I'd be surprised if we go to the end of this week without hearing a facilities plan and an extension at the same time for Tony Vitello. I think that's on the horizon. I won't make any guarantees. I don't know if that happens this week. I would be surprised if it is not in the next 7 to 10 days. Let's just say that.
And the reason we know the discussions revolve around that is because he's just straight up telling us, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. We had him on Buck's show the other week, and one of my good friends that listens to the station texted me. He's like coach interviews suck, but he's insane. It's like you're just got a buddy on the phone. Yeah, stadium. Got to have stadium renovations. We're really centered around that. I mean, he's telling you what he is talking to Tennessee administration about. It's just so rare to see, and we get it every time we talk to him.
The negotiation for Vitello's extension has more to do with the facilities than it even does his own salary.
Mm-hmm.
That's without a doubt.
100%. And
Tony's
he's been
great.
consistent with that.
Oh, he definitely has.
So that will be interesting to keep an eye on. Hope you'll stay with us all week. The whole crew, in terms of our zone lineup, should be back tomorrow. Like I said, Will and Braden will step in for Buck the rest of the week from 10 to 1. So outside of tomorrow, we will have Buck back for that. But hope you will hang out with us. Hope you've enjoyed your long weekend and you enjoyed your time with us. We've had fun for the last 4 hours. Flew by. Again, you and I will be back on the Nashville Soccer Show tomorrow at 9 p.m.
That's right.
UT podcasts Wednesday afternoon. Stay tuned for that. We will be looking at every position group on Tennessee football week by week in the lead up to that Thursday night kickoff to the season against Bowling Green. So stay posted for that on the 104.5 The Zone Podcast Network.
Who are we doing this week?
I was about to say that. Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to do this off air or on air?
Let's do it on air. We've got, how long do we have?
Let's do, we got to get out. Let's do linebackers.
Perfect.
Let's talk linebackers.
We'll do it live.
On the UT podcast.
Backers.
Titans-Bills coming up. Tuesday night football right here on The Zone if you want to relive that fun night in Nissan Stadium. But this has been fun. Appreciate all of you for hanging out with us. For Will Bowling, I'm Lucas Panzica, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
I'm Chris Moore with a CBS Sports Minute, sponsored by Credit Karma Money. Progress starts here.